Is this going to work for me? Make sure that's paused. That needs to pause. Hello. It should all be working. Now, is the sound working? Yes. Are we live? We are on YouTube. Let's check Twitch. If you don't let me log in today, Twitch, you and I are going to have serious issues because you were causing enough trouble yesterday. Okay, that's working. We are live on both. Hello, everyone. Let me just put my phone on charge. Give the fluffy research assistant his required head pats. And, of course, today we're starting the new system of Iron Brew. We're starting a new system of Iron Brew. So, hello everyone, and welcome to, welcome to Submarines and the Minor Navies, the Polish, the Greek, the Dutch, and the Norwegian boats in World War II. And I'm your host and friendly naval historian, Alex Clarke. That's the Poodle, the senior fluffy research assistant. For some reason, my Black & Decker drill is sitting there, but we're not going to move it because it's literally just come back not that long recently from being repaired, and so we're still checking it. And, yeah. You might see behind the Poodle there's a load of cans of Iron Brew. That's my entire supply I'm allowed for the next 30 days. So every 30 days I am allowed 48 cans of Iron Brew. Which is fun. But that's going to hopefully help me achieve my return to something which is fitter than I currently am. I would like to go fitter than even I was pre-pneumonia. But we'll see. We'll see. So hello everyone. Hello. How are we all doing? Sound is good. Everything's working now. The world is good. The world is very good. Restream doesn't catch resub messages. Well, I've got both Twitch and YouTube open separately on the screen next to me. So, honestly, if it's not catching it, then I apologize. I can't really do any more. I've got it so it should catch it and should see it should flash up. I literally have them going in a corner on one side, on one screen, and then on another screen I have... Basically, I have one screen set up for the chats, literally, and one screen set up for everything else. It works. Runon, subscribe to your channel for 25 months. Cool. Yes. That does work. That does work. So, apologies Thursday had to be delayed to today. We were having internet issues. The internet kept... it wasn't the internet, though, it was a fault. It was the power which kept going. And the power line kept going down, and so it doesn't matter if you have Starlink. What do you have? The power line not working. No internet works. Now, this is why eventually I'm hoping to have... Well, very soon I'm hoping to have... batteries and solar panels. So recommendations for that are gratefully received, especially how big an array we should have. I'm thinking 12 to 15 panels, because I think 10 panels is not going to be enough with both me and my sister working from home and the massive computers that are used, plus cooking a day. But we'll see. Hello. Yes, you're... what you all don't realise I'm getting is I'm getting the full paw and arm treatment from the senior fluffy research assistant. The full, hello, this is live. So, as you all saw in a video the other day, I did give a graphic demonstration of what he's like when I'm recording. Asleep on the floor. Basically, you know, he doesn't take any notice of me at all. Live. So, when he's live, then it's, hello everyone. How are we doing? How goes the world? He is a poodle. What can I say? He is a poodle. And this is kind of unusual, because it's kind of unusual to do these live streams on a Saturday, but, you know, hope you enjoyed. So, before we start, actually, I'm going to explain this a bit about us. So, basically, the question that came from Robert Locke was submarines of the minor navies, Polish, Greek, Dutch, Norwegian submarines in World War II. And I thought, well, what I'll do is I will save the stories of the boats and what they get up to in detail for the year of the submarines, when eventually we can do that. But this year, this is the year of leadership. Next year, still deciding which of the vessels we will do. I don't think it's going to be submarines next year, do you? Don't think it's submarines next year. Doesn't really fit, and also we haven't got the graphics for the submarines yet, have we? We haven't got graphics set up for submarines, so you know we definitely need green screen, everything else set up for the submarines before that can be done. Hello, you are gorgeous, yes you are, and you are a poodle. We know you are very beautiful. But what we can do is do a history of their procurements and talk about them. Now, some of you who are eagle-eyed might have noticed that the Saturday Patron Premiere version, the Long Patrol version, this has already been uploaded and done. Because I recorded it yesterday as I was planning to record it anyway. So yes, that's already been done. And that's already been uploaded. So it's kind of a weird scenario for the Long Patrol to have been uploaded and ready to go before the live has even been done. Hello. Hello. Yes, you're cute. Now, I'm going to get on with this live, and I'm going to talk about submarines for a bit. And I know, you think looking cute is going to get you lots and lots of positive attention, and lots and lots of loving, and lots of people telling you how beautiful you are. But we'll save that for when we get to the shameless book plug. And then we'll tell them all about you, shall we? We'll save that for the shameless book plug. All about, and then they can learn all about you, and they can be very, very happy. Because they can buy what someone, and I'm not going to name names here, considers his Bicky supply of the Spreadshirt store. No, I'm not getting the sugar-free. No, Michael Cooch, the sugar-free Iron Brew tastes foul. My policy has always been with the sugar stuff, A, what they replace the sugar with, and B, and this is more importantly, I'd rather have less of the stuff which tastes nice than have stuff which I don't like. Thank you. One gift sub reward for one sub for reward. Goodness, oh, there's a hype train going on Twitch. So, we're going to work through the Polish, then the Greek, then there's the Polish and Greek navies, then there's the shameless book plug, and then there's the Dutch and Norwegian boats. So that's the order we're going in. And we're literally going to work through the boats they ordered in order, and the boats they got in the wartime. And I'd like to say that there are some issues which I'm going to talk about and some things I'm going to talk about, because one navy starts off going down the absolute perfect route and then changes. And several navies take their time to get there because these are smaller nations. And what they're looking at for their submarines and their submarine forces, they're not building to the same scale as larger navies. So it's interesting to look at them. What you find, though, is that they are building a very limited in terms of capability, and they are self-limiting in so many ways. They are so self-limiting. We had an episode about Riley's friends, the ship dogs. Oh, don't get me started. He's not sure if he's friends with ship's dogs. No, he's not sure if he's friends with them or not. Mainly because, you know, do they share their biscuits with him? If they do, then they're his friends. If not, then they're not. He's very picky over friends. No, he really isn't. He loves everyone. He basically will give a hug to anyone, and he will try to climb up you to give you a hug. He believes everyone deserves a hug. He's a poodle dog. Now, the Vilk or Wolf class. With Riss, aka Lynx, and Zibik, the Wildcat. Now, this class of Polish submarines are some of the finest submarines built. They really are. And it's one of the strangest parts of naval history to me. And I do want to say it's strange to me that the lovely people known as the Polish do not just keep building more of them. They are such good boats, they are such sensible boats, and they are such versatile boats for them. It would seem to me to be fairly obvious to keep building more of them. It would seem to be. But they don't. They build free. They build free. And these... Well, to my mind, the closest similarity in terms of boat that's actually built in the period is the Lembit class, Lembit subs. The Kalev class, they're called, and they were the ones built for Estonia. Lembit is, of course, the vessel which survives and is in Tallinn as a museum ship and is really worthwhile visiting. And, of course, they are based on the Royal Navy's U-class submarines adapted by Vickers Armstrong into a mine-laying vessel. They are a really, really cool design. A really cool design. The Wilk is similar to me. That's what the Wilk are. They are these cool general-purpose boats. They displace 980 tons on the surface. They have 1,250 tons submerged. They have a top speed on the surface of 14.5 knots, an underwater speed of 9.5 knots, meaning they're fast. They are fast. And they can carry mines and torpedoes. They carry mines and torpedoes. They are based on a French design, which makes sense for when they're built. It makes sense for when they're built. You know, because the French at that point, and especially if we look at the Pierre Chalilly, the French design they're based on, are producing some very good, world-beating submarines. And they are built. They are laid down in 1928-ish, launched in 1929, 1931 in the case of Zibik, and enter service very, very soon. After that, they are very capable boats. They're a crew of usually closer to 60 than 40, but it's theoretically 46 to 54, but usually adaptable. They carry 16 torpedo tubes. No, 16 torpedoes. And they have 4 bow tubes and 2 rotating tubes, a twin tube, rotating tube, amidships, which means they have 6 torpedoes carrying tubes and 10 reloads. The really interesting thing for me is they carry 40 mines. 40 mines. So on the package you are getting, on a vessel which displays less than 1,000 tons, you're getting something which carries 16 torpedoes, a very usable amount, has a forward firing spread of 4, which isn't massive, but in terms of the Baltic is very good, and can also lay mines. I'd have said for a Baltic Navy, this is pretty much the perfect design you could be getting, because this is going to allow you to block up either the Soviets or the Germans, should you need to. You can put mines off their ports, and you can do it discreetly. You can torpedo narrow things in narrow spaces. This is a very sensible, very capable class. The trouble is they only get 3 of them. And of those in World War II, only Wilk escapes to Britain. But keeping her going, keeping her in service, especially when she's damaged, gets a problem. So she's actually placed in reserve in 1942. But she's still useful. She does multiple patrols. She's a very successful boat for her patrols. The other 2 are part of the, what I tend to call the Polish submarine squadron of threat, sitting in Sweden, whereby the Swedes have interned them, yes. But they do the bare minimum of internment, and they keep them well maintained, and they keep the crews looked after. And everyone knows that if the Germans did anything nasty to Sweden, the first thing they'd do is let the Polish submariners go. Now, they were built in France. All these boats are built in France, which again makes sense. They're a French design. You don't build domestically, launching a submarine of this complexity when you've never built a submarine before, especially if you're using someone else's design. But they are good boats. And yeah. Leaving that to one side, and I've just realised after I've said that, abuse of the mainstream media can apparently harm your mind, has decided that's a very long title. Well, I'm not just going to call you abuse, but that is a very long title. Has come to that. Yeah. But they're good boats. They're sensible boats. They're capable boats. And the Wilk, which I was getting into, does do an interesting operations during World War II. Now, there is a dispute as to what they actually had an accident with during their patrol time, because they did quite a few patrols. They did 9. And whilst they didn't have any successes, they did at one point ram into something. The idea that what we think they rammed into was a German minefield protector buoy. What we think they rammed into. The Polish claimed they rammed into a German submarine, but the trouble is the German boats which were in that area were rather few and far between, because most of the German boats in that area tend to be passing through. Unless, of course, they rammed into a Dutch boat, which was lost in the area about that time, but it's unlikely. It's unlikely. As for ordering more, they've been spacing out the ordering to grow their fleet. Again, you have to remember, for the Polish, they've always got to put the ground forces first. They've always got to build up the ground forces first. They've got huge land borders, and they are quite literally sandwiched between the Soviet Union and, by the late 30s, Nazi Germany. But even the Weimar Republic was not exactly their friend. The Weimar Republic was unstable and had issues, and had a very complicated relationship always with Poland due to the Danzig Corridor and various other things. So in the nicest way, Poland always had to put the army first. And that's understandable when they're in that situation. But still, it would have been nicer to have had more boats. It would certainly have made more sense to have had more boats if they could have done. But there's a limit to what you can spend, and there's a limit to what you have available. But Wilkes, after collision, which might have been with a submarine, probably with a protector buoy, minefield protector buoy, doesn't really do that well mechanically. And eventually they first decommission her to reserve in 1942, and in 1946 the Polish government in exile actually give Wilkes to British control, and so she's laid up at Harwich. And then when she's only towed to Poland in October 1952, declared unfit for service and scrapped in 1954. But her crew had been good. She'd had very good officers and very skilled personnel. And her escape to the UK is often less talked about than Orzel's escape, but really both should be remembered. Wilkes has a slight advantage in it. She has a slight advantage in it, in that I would say, honestly, she doesn't have sick officers and she's heading in the right direction to begin with. That helps her. Now, the interesting thing is then we go to the Orzel class. Then we go to the Orzels. And again, as much as I love the Orzels, and they are an interesting class, and there were plans for improved Orzels, which were going to be another 2 to 3 boats, the Orzels are now a Dutch design and built in the Netherlands. You can actually see Orzel under construction. Orzel's this picture and this picture, and then Sepp, which is her surviving gun, and her in Sweden, I think. Now, they are good boats. They are good boats. They are bigger boats. They're bigger boats. And Orzel literally does escape to Britain, navigating by luck, hope, and the coast. She really doesn't have many other options other than that. Because, honestly, she loses her she's being interned in Estonia, and she loses she has her charts taken off her and various other things, and under pressure from the Germans, and then, well, she leaves. But she managed to get away. She leaves her commanding officer behind because he was sick ashore, and navigates her way to Britain by luck as much as anything. And it's a really interesting turn. The trouble is, on her trip, and she only had 5 torpedoes, I think, left on her trip. So she never used them for anything. She didn't attack anything. But the Soviets actually used the fleeing of the Orzel, claimed she'd sunk something en route, and used that as pretext to invade Estonia. So please note, something blowing up being used as a pretext to invade another country. Yeah, that's nothing new. That is nothing new. But the main thing about this class is, again, like the Wilkes, they're built abroad, they're built in the Netherlands. Again, none of them built in the same yard. Orzel's built in De Schelde, Vissingen, and Sepp's built by RDM in Rotterdam. They are well armed. They have 12 torpedo tubes, 4 bow-mounted tubes, 4 stern tubes, and 2 twin trainable mounts amidships. So, yeah, they have 12 torpedo tubes. There is a debate as to whether they are based on or the basis for the O-19s and the O-16s of the Dutch Navy, and when we get to them you can make a judgment yourself. Sepp also spends her war in Sweden. They are capable boats, though. They are capable boats, but they have no mine-laying capability. They are entirely torpedo capability, and that, for me, is a problem. You see, for me, a small navy must do everything it can to maximize the presence and capability of its force. I have had this discussion with people before about, honestly, about Royal Navy submarines. To me, a submarine being able to lay mines, preferably not by torpedo tube, preferably by actual mine-laying capability so they can lay decent mines, a submarine being able to lay mines enables that submarine to actually be in two places at once, in effect. Because a submarine is a sea denial tool. It's a tool of being able to deny you the use of the sea. It can set up mines in one place and move itself somewhere else to torpedo you. You find the mines, you go another route, you run straight into their torpedoes if they're really smart, and you've got the Baltic or the Baltic or somewhere similarly with similar interesting littorals. But not everyone sees it that way. You see, whilst mines had been the most effective submarine deployed weapon of World War I, far surpassing the torpedo, they don't have the same level of control. They don't have the same level of control. Torpedoes, you point, you shoot, you're sure the target is a valid one. Mines, you can't be sure about that. It's whatever runs into them. And you don't tend to stick up a massive notice to say, minefield is here. You don't. But still, mines are incredibly effective, and if I'm building a small navy, if I'm building a navy which has not enough submarines that I can afford to have specialist mine-laying boats and regular boats, i.e. I've not got enough boats, I have got, I'd say in modern circumstances, I'd say if I have anything less than the total force of 24 boats, then I can't afford for them to be there to be specialist mine layers in there. I need them all to have a capacity for mine laying. Maybe it's not the same capacity. Maybe they don't have the ability to deploy 40 mines. Maybe they have the ability to deploy 20 mines. Or in these modern days, it could be Cat units or something like that. But it's worthwhile. Now, on the subject of Orsol's wartime duties and what she gets up to, there is quite a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, and I'll get in that in a second. I'm just going to answer the question. I was wondering, midship mines can be tubes can be used when diving. This is from Abuse of the Mainstream. Oh, good lord! Seriously, we are going to have to come up with a shorter title because your title is almost as long as your question. I love you dearly, you do great questions, but seriously, your title is almost as long as your question. I'm just going to call you mainstream media, okay? Or something like that. I might even call you MM. I don't know. Anyway. Well, Carl von Gasberg I've shortened to KVG because that's just too long, so, you know. Abuse is okay, yeah, but that just sounds like I'm being rude to the chat the whole time. We'll work it out. We will work it out. Right, so The thing is, to be fair, the problem with using torpedo tubes when diving is you have to wait till the pressure is balanced, okay? So most submarines have an issue with firing torpedoes from their launchers when they are when they're in the transition phase. There are no real launchers which are designed to be fired. Well, they might be fired. We might be under the water. We might be out. We might be in the water. We might be over it, out it, or in it. We don't know. You don't do that. You fire the torpedoes in one or the other because it's all about equalizing pressure. Because if you get the figures wrong, you can end up sinking your own boat. Hey, Foxer. Now, in the case of Orzel, that's actually a fun story, when I say fun story, it's a mystery, but it's been well tracked down, and I do think we do have an idea where Orzel is now. And I do know, here's one of the things. Pre-COVID, there was a lot of stuff going on, and there was a possibility I was going to be involved in the team going to look for her. And I was really interested in that because she disappeared and no one was quite sure what happened to her. And it'd be really nice to discover. But then COVID happened and various other things happened, and I don't want to push myself in when they've got others in their team who are going to do it, and it seems more fair, but she's a story and a half, also. She is a story and a half, and her loss, she was doing something in North Sea. She's on 23rd of May 1940. She departs on her patrol. They receive no response from her, even when they send out messages asking her to alter their patrol area. When she's ordered to return on the 5th of June, they don't hear anything from her again. Still don't hear her. And on the 8th of June, she's declared lost. There is a theory that she may have been hit a mine, either a German or British one, near Skagerrak, or others we might call it Jutland. But the other theory is that she may have been sunk by British aircraft or even by German aircraft. No one's quite sure what might have happened to this boat. There have been multiple Polish expeditions to try and find her, and they have done a lot of work. But the actual finding her hasn't necessarily taken place yet. And the problem I would say, this is something worthwhile mentioning, is when boats, as in submarines, sink, there are rarely survivors to tell us what happened. There are rarely survivors. And the nature of anti-submarine warfare, whereby you're dropping depth charges, dropping bombs, rapidly engaging a target, means you're never quite sure whether you did or didn't. And honestly, the big trouble for hunting her is no one knew when anything had happened to her, because there is always the possibility, especially with submarines, that they they send acknowledgement and then they dive down to get away. Because when they send out a radio signal, that's highlighting their position. Any listening post along the coast could be triangulating and going, "Oh, submarine there, send this things there." And you might not pick it up, because if it's too low power, if it doesn't bounce off the atmosphere right, if there's any form of distortion, it might not get through. Or they might have had their own radio equipment, might have just been damaged. Akira, I realise that Skagerrak is the sea area and Jutland is the Danish peninsula, but there's a reason why I said it the way I did, because they are not on the... They were probably not... from what we understand, they were not on the British side of the Skagerrak. They were on the heading towards the continental side, which is Jutland area, sort of Skagerrak, Jutland. Yeah, one of the things I will say is that while hunting for her, they found HMS J6, they found Narwhal, they found a lot of other boats, and that was actually... This is one of the things. While hunting for her, they've found a lot of others. Honestly, Knight. The thing is, the ocean floor the North Sea floor is very big, and whilst yes, they did a big scan of the Jutland battlefield area, even then there was stuff which was picked up later. So, yeah, I don't take this the wrong way, but no one going into studying these things has infinite, endless money and time. And so there are always a limits to how much research, how much you can do, how much you can get details from, and how much has been moved around by various things. And again, the narwhal data. Okay, Knight. The narwhal data is based on sonar scanning of it, and it looks the closest boat and type it could have looked like to is narwhal. But until again someone funds people to go down there and do the search in person or with robots, and actually try and find some verify, we're going to have to presume it's narwhal. I'm glad that I'm to be of service, Foxo. I'm glad to be of service. Anyway, the Polish were not happy with only having 2 boats to fight the war. Now, I have to say, they are braver than me. They are braver than me. Because they get in what was originally a US Navy S-class submarine. And the S-boats, aka the sugar boats, were built 1918 to 1925. And they get hold of one. S-25. And S-25 was... how do I put this? Well, if you consider it... 25 is one of the first group of boats, the Holland boat sort of built. Built by Bethlehem Steel in Quincy. They are interesting vessels. You would... Honestly, I'm not sure whether you would get me to go into one of these boats. It's not the worst boat that we're going to see in this period. It's not the worst boat of any of these minor Navy that's going to operate at all in this period. But it is certainly... Okay, it's an old boat. It is a very old boat. It had first been laid down in 1918, launched in 1922. It was loaned to the Royal Navy, who didn't really want to use it. It was basically loaned to the Royal Navy as P551. The Royal Navy takes one look at it and goes, "We're not sure about this." And the Polish government exile goes, "We'll take it!" And Bolsor Romanowski, Lieutenant Commander of the Polish Navy, takes it on. The phrasing used to describe why the Polish get it, not the Royal Navy, is that the Royal Navy has a lack of trained submariners at the time. But having read the reports the Royal Navy compiled on this boat, frankly, I don't... The phrasing goes, we're not sure how it's going to fit in our concept of operations. I think realistically, training the crew up to operate what is an old American star boat with American star controls, if it were being charitable, just didn't fit within the British strategy of how to train them. And they're training a lot of and they don't want to take a crew out and train them for what is basically a one-off boat with no transferable skills onto other boats in terms of the controls. It doesn't make sense for them. It makes more sense for a small navy. Oh, Knight, don't start talking about obsolescence yet. It gets worse. Look, in the nicest way, we haven't gone to Norwegian boats. Don't leave any remarks about obsolescence and old boats until we get onto the Norwegian boats, okay? There is a reason I have left them where they are in the order of discovery and discernment. There is a reason I have left them to the end. I am going to get numerous people by the end of this being either very annoyed with the Norwegian government or very annoyed with me. It's going to be one or the other, okay? But the Polish were able to take this boat. They were able to use it. And it was attacked with depth charges on occasions by the Norwegians. HMS St. Albans. And HMS Seagull, when it was, part of the convoy of PQ-15. It was so badly damaged it had to be scuttled. There is a whole debate as to what was the problem and why she was done. The commander of her... well, there's a whole debate as to whether the sub was out of a position or whether the convoy was out of position. Here's the rough rule of thumb. The convoy goes where the convoy needs to go and the subs keep clear. That's it. The convoy doesn't move around the sub moves around the convoy. And if the sub ends up turning up in a position where they're expecting there to be attacking subs and doesn't manage to get off the identification quick enough, it's going to get slammed. The convoy had altered course to avoid ice, but the incident actually does take place a couple of 100 miles from the Norwegian coast, so it's not exactly where the submarine should be patrolling if it's patrolling Norwegian coast, so probably it's patrolling their route. It's part of the covering force for the convoy going through to make sure they're not attacked, which makes sense for using a boat for that, but that means their route is supposed to be passing beyond next to its patrol area, and they've had to divert for ice through its patrol area, so it should be keeping enough alert that goes, if it hears such a large force as a convoy coming through, get out the way. Get out the way. But there again, with a speed of 11 knots submerged and 14.5 knots on the surface, they're not sure how quickly they could get out the way. I'd also point out that whilst there is some interesting positions put forward by some sources on this particular discussion, including a Polish one which was published in 1976, There's no fault found with any of the commanders. Um, there is a full court of inquiry, which is normal, and no blame is attributed to the commanders. They saw submarine. It wasn't indicating the requirement. It wasn't meeting the recognition requirements. They engaged and sunk. That's their standing orders. That's the case. But life happens. It's not a good thing, but life happens, as they say. Their other boats are two U-class submarines. And I will say this, the Royal Navy's U-class turn out to be very popular with allied nations. I think they're popular for two reasons, similar to these, which are basically used, modified, and improved. They're popular because they're quite small crews. They're 49 or so. They are a handy sized boat for inshore work, for littoral work, for work in the Mediterranean and the coastal regions of Northern Europe. And they are very good killing submarines. They go out and kill. They are basically the boats which are going out killing everything. And Britain keeps building them. Their complement's actually up to 31, not 49. They could have up to 49 aboard in life, but you know. They have a top speed of 11.5 knots on the surface, 10 knots submerged, 6 tubes. They have 6 torpedo tubes, 4 internal, 2 external, and they carry 10 torpedoes normally. So normally what they do is they have the 6 loaded up, and then they have 4 more reloads inside, so they can reload the internal torpedoes. And they have a single 3-inch gun. Now, the boats that the Norwegians, the Poles had, well, one of them, you might be looking at this and go, Alex, why do you have a battle flag here? Well, I have a battle flag because they really do take to the British submarine culture. What can I say? They really, really do take to the British submarine culture. I'm not sure how more to describe it than that. And they do, because the Disney, aka the Boar, this is her flag, and she's one of the most successful submarines in World War II in European waters. She sinks 18 vessels. And this is her Jolly Roger. This is her Jolly Roger. Now, she actually earned the nickname from the Royal Navy Jolly Roger, and when the crew found out what it was, they decided they were going to fly the flag, and then they found out some other Royal Navy culture, and that crew became incredibly Royal Navy. Incredibly Royal Navy. She's a very capable boat. She liked to engage enemy surface ships with her 3-inch gun, a 76mm gun, and she actually carried out boarding actions twice as well. In the Mediterranean, she was surely one of the scourges of the sea. Darius, I'm not sure where you get the stats and discussions about the U-Class, but the U-Class were never about training boat status. I know there's some weird mythology about them, but the T-boats are built for the war in the Far East, where their ranges make sense, and the T-boats do make more sense for the Far East, so that's why they're being built, because Japan's the bigger threat. The S-boats are the multi-role, operate anywhere, And the U-class are realistic to design. They're keeping going for Mediterranean operations and for Northern European operations, which they don't really build as many of them when they don't know if they're going to need them. I do realize there are some historians in the past who have said this makes them training boat sailors, but they weren't. And I would also point out that when we're talking about the U-class, you have the fact that the Royal Navy had ordered one launched in 1937, two had launched in 1938 because they're developing the designs. Once they have a working design, they're all ordered in September 1939 before war begins. It's kind of the same procedure as what's going on with the Flower-class corvettes, etc. These are the vessels they can mass produce quickly when they think war's coming. They don't need as long to build them in and bring them into service. And this is the trouble. Royal Navy's preparing on a war in 1942 scenario. So if you're ordering in September 1939, they would have had lots of them. The Group 2 would have all been in service. They basically turn around and then order a batch 3 and a batch 4 in 1940 and a batch 5 in 1941, and then they get onto the V-class boats, which are basically batches 6 and 7 of them. But yeah, the reason you build the T-boats when you do is because which is more complicated to build, the T-boat or the U-boat? Honestly, the T-boat is actually slightly easier in some ways to build because the U-class boat has a far more work done on their hull and they're still developing that. That's why they're building as they are. The U-class are probably the development of the finest piece of hydro-engineering the Royal Navy had done. No U-class boats survive, but if you want to go see something which is based off their hull, please go have a look at the Lembit in Tallinn. That is a modified U-class hull given mine layer capabilities, and that's an absolutely gorgeous boat, and yes, that's the one which made me and Garius go silent for about a good 30 minutes. Just looking at it going, ooh. But yeah, there is a problem in the teaching of history sometimes in that people will will think they've got a narrative and will put it back onto it without actually going and looking into the information. And a very easy narrative is to say, oh, the British were being slow in these things. But they're the same people who like to claim that the Hunt class and the Flower class corvettes are war emergency build ships. And they're all ordered pre-war. They're part of Britain's build-up for war. The Royal Navy was told war was going to come not before 1942. So they're preparing for war as they're being allowed economically. The Navy might have stronger suspicions, but they've been told economically they're not being funded. It's like if you notice current scenario, the British government has firmly told the armed forces they have till 2030 something to prepare. They don't expect any wider conflict before 2030 something. Just remember that. That was the British government in 1932 and repeating in 1937 when after 5 years they finally let off the funding perhaps off. Yeah. It's always a fun thing to try and get through. So yeah, you build the T-boats first. Yeah, it's a weird thing to say. The T-boats are easier to build. They're the ambush predators for the Far East. Now we're on to the Greeks. And what can I say about the Greeks? They really needed some mine-laying submarines. Ewok 40. Yeah, the Polish did go for wild animals. But yes, the Greeks need some mine-laying submarines, and they don't get them. They don't get them. Oh, Castaner, you're so close. 1937, but yeah. The funding circle is funding is 1937. The stuff actually starts being procured in about 1938, but you are right. You are so close there. It's 37 though, not 38. 37. You have to understand the British funding cycle. So it's 37 the funding actually starts over. 1932 they announced the 10-year rule's over, so they're expecting war in 10 years' time. And it's 1937 they actually let the funds go, and that's why in 1938 you start seeing things actually being bought. Yeah, no, Darius, it's honestly some people consider all sorts of things, but they tend to not be reading actually going back and going through the history. They tend to be just putting their own views onto the history. Britain didn't need the U-class boats for trainers. They have plenty of other boats they're using for trainers. So, here's the thing, and I'm going to complain about this longly and loudly. Finding decent pictures that I am legally allowed to use of the Katsonis class, and don't get me started on the next Greek submarines, is frigating difficult. Okay? It's frigating difficult. The Greeks actually do good work. And once again, they go for boats based on French vessels, the Clarke class submarines. They decide that they are going to mount, for some reason, and I still do. Okay, look. So they're operating in the Mediterranean, right? They're operating in the Mediterranean. And they decide they need to mount the 100mm gun inside the conning tower. They need to mount the 4-inch gun inside the conning tower. Which is a decision you normally make if you're operating in rough waters. You do that if you're operating in rough waters. You don't do that. You don't do that unless you are operating the Mediterranean. And with Sorio, I know you're probably repeating the information put in the Polish book published in 1976 about it. The trouble is, it's complete and utter twaddle and doesn't count with any of these sources on the British side. It even includes that the British commanders were censured and everything they weren't, and no ship saw any yellow signals, and there are a lot more than just St Albans and the Seagull. They were familiar with their records, and actually it says it was flying. Had a yellow candle flare, and that was not even technically the signal they were supposed to be put up, and no other source claims it was, other than the Polish source. So, yeah, no, sorry. That doesn't work. Just doesn't. It just doesn't work. And yeah, if you go out, you go in Polish ensign, all these things, it's an engagement with a submarine. In a nicest way, the rules of operating when you see a convoy in the Allied circumstances were quite simple for for Allied submarines. You don't go anywhere near an Allied convoy. You stay far away from it, because they are ordered to shoot submarines on sight. So, I'm sorry. I know there's a very good and very compelling Polish account, which doesn't fit with any of the actual sources and the actual records in the Allied side, or in either the British or the Norwegian accounts, or even the Polish accounts given during the war. It's published at the height of the Cold War, so there is in a nice way all sorts of issues there. So yeah, sorry about that one. But now onto the Greek Navy. And again, these boats are quite good. But Cassonis herself is sunk by a German submarine chaser on the 14th September 1943. And Papa Nicholas, well, she decommissions in 1945, and this picture is actually of her. And she had an interesting service throughout the war. She served well, that she seems to have done many tours. One of her tours involved putting ashore some New Zealand commandos. She's a good boat. She tried to attack various things. She managed to... She was basically... The Greek boats really seemed to be successful in SOE operations, in supporting those kind of operations. They weren't necessarily the best at going and doing other patrols, always, but they were really, really good at SOE operations. I do think myself, though, that they would have been better if they'd had some mine-laying capability. They really didn't need it. And the Greeks were good sailors. They were really good. SOE insertions are incredibly difficult operations. Please don't get me wrong. They're incredibly difficult. One of the things that seems to be, and this is an interesting report I found, but I haven't found any other sources backing this up in terms of primary information. I have literally found one account and one note, which was that their fire control and torpedo systems weren't always the best, and were consistently suffered from issues throughout the war, which is why they seem to have tried many times to try and sink ships, but often had difficulty doing it. But there again, she did sink some sailing vessels and some vessels, so yeah. Special Operation Executive. SOE, Kevin Ray. SOE operations. Abuse of mainstream? Abuse the mainstream? AMM? Not sure. You can have some very nasty conditions around Greek islands. You can. But nasty enough that I am going to I consider my boat's requirements to have a 4-inch gun mounted in a conning tower with all the stability issues and the issues it's going to have on fire control and fire stability of the gun and weight in the hull. No, there's not enough there. There's not enough there that I want to do that. George Tucker, the Mark 14 sunk some ships too. Yes, it did. Then we have the Protests class. Protests, and I do like the Greek submarines, you can always tell because they are Y. They're Y3, Y4, Y5, Y6, Why have a submarine? Because it's useful. But this class, I can't find a single image I'm allowed to use, and I did send a message to other sources as well, and they didn't have one either. So if anyone knows of an image of this class in public, so it's that I can actually use, I will do a key ships on this class of submarine, literally to rectify the issue. But as it is at the moment, I cannot find a picture I am allowed to use. But that doesn't mean they're bad boats. In fact, they are very useful boats. And one of the things you find when you look into the Greeks is they are very clear with their submarines. Very, very clear. If the worst happens, you go to Alexandria, you report to the Royal Navy, you fold in with them. They have that very clearly written down, very clearly worked out. They know exactly what they're there to do. Now, the Greek Minister of Finance was a major threat, I do have to agree, but I also think, in the nicest way, the Greek Navy, again, they buy some excellent submarines, but again, no mine-laying capability. They are small, good boats. These should be kings, absolutely kings of the Mediterranean. And they are really well named, but one gets, they're built in France, mostly by AC de la Loire. Galapagos is built by Chantiers Navals. And the class, the protest class, well, one's sunken round by an Italian torpedo boat, the Antares, December 1940. One is sunk in November 1942 by the German patrol boat UJ 2102, from my notes. Nifras is decommissioned in 1945, and Galapagos is kind of like Orlov in that it's lost in April 1942, and we're still trying to confirm why. Now, ex-Submariner, the reason you don't have mines that can fit inside torpedo tubes is, well, the major powers didn't do that either. At this point, during World War II. And the reason they don't do it is because the mines at this point, most of the mines, are deployed with a base which comes down. So actually you have special tubes. You load them in the top and you open the bottom. They drop down to the seabed and then they pop up and unfurl. So that's how the minefield gets created, okay? So they have a weight which goes down to the bottom and then they come up from the chain. So they're anchored in place so they don't move around. That's how mines were made, sort of worked at this point. So that's what the mines are when we're talking about in this period. Not necessarily, the major powers at this point are also doing the same thing. The Royal Navy has mine-laying submarines. That's the thing. The Royal Navy has specific mine-laying boats, and I've talked about them before. But basically, the mines they're deploying they'd be deploying would be very similar to the World War I era mines. Now, a lot of mines get developed and improved during World War II, and there are mines which are later on will fit in to those things. But at this point, they're not that available. And that's why, again, if you go see the Limbet, you'll see this mine-laying system. It's a really cool system. You'll be able to look up the tubes, and you go, oh, that explains it. And that's why they would carry only usually 2 mines per tube. So when we're talking about that earlier class, the Wilk class of the Polish Navy, they have 10 tubes, port and starboard each. They have 10 tubes about, and each one carries each tube carries 2 mines. And so they drop one. They'd open a tube, and one would drop out, and then they could drop the second one out. You're thinking 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah. I can understand that, Examiner, because that's it's very much what you start thinking about and what they develop, because they want to keep that capability and they want to get that capability back in the service without having the specialist mine-laying tubes. But the thing is, it was something which in this period it's an actual sort of, I don't want to say proper mine, but it's the mine you imagine when you hear the word sea mine and you're thinking about those balls with spikes coming out of them and dangling from a chain and a weight on the seabed. You think about that. Well, that's actually what they're dropping. That's what they'd actually be dropping if they're a mine layer. I'm not sure why there is a zebedee woofing quite so much. I'm presuming food has arrived. I can hear the corgi telling someone off. They probably deserve it. Now, the interesting thing about this class and its real party piece was they could do 100 nautical miles at 5 knots. Now, you remember I've talked about the Mediterranean before, how the current in and out of the Mediterranean is usually around about 7 or so knots, and if you can't go faster than that, you aren't getting in, or you're not getting out, because underwater. But the thing is, and here's the really interesting fun. for quite a lot of the underwater currents, you can drift with 5 knots. So being able to do 100 nautical miles at 5 knots underwater is a really great party piece for being able to sneak around. Now, Castanea, would Specialist Mine Tubes be easily modified to VLS cells? Theoretically, you could do it, but it could be interesting, but theoretically, you could do it. Yeah, I think it's a Tesco's or Asda delivery. But as you notice, the senior fluffy research assistant doesn't care. They haven't come to his door. They aren't disturbing him. They each have their own front doors. As far as he's concerned, this one's his. If people come to this one, then he woofs. But if people go to that one, he doesn't care. That's on them. Now, their wartime procurement is fun, okay? Because they get something really special. I mean, the Greeks really do get a special boat. They get the Perla. Yes, it's Pearl, but it's called Perla because it's an Italian vessel. And she's a gorgeous boat. She really is. She has 6 21-inch torpedo tubes, 4 in the bow, 2 in the stern. She has a 4-inch gun, and they get her late in the war, okay? They get her late in the war, because in 1943, she's given to the Greeks. They rename her the Mantrosos. She's numbered Y7, and she serves well. She doesn't get much in the way of action, because if you think about it, she is given to them in 1943, and they serve mostly in the Mediterranean. And if you consider the Mediterranean after 1943, there isn't much going on there from a naval perspective. There's not much that's happening there. But she does well. Kevin Ray, were magnetic mines ever spread via submarines in World War II? That's an interesting question. I know it was discussed and considered and looked at. I'm not sure if they ever went through with it. I would have to study all the mine-laying operations carried out. The answer is possibly not, because of the fact that they were so easy to deploy by aircraft, and that was the primary means of deploying magnetic mines. But there's always a possibility. But the reason Castanea and KVG, I answered Castanea's question of would the specialist mine tubes be easily able to be modified to VLS cells, is because they have openings both at top and bottom, and they are cells the whole way through. So whilst they go the whole way through the boat in the outer casing. So usually, if you can mount a casing that could support the missiles, you could probably do it. But you'd have to mount something in the cell which would do it, which could allow you to support the things. Runon, what's Runon up to? Why is X-Hammer calling for Runon? Now, other than that, the Greeks went for the V-class, and they really liked the V-class, to the extent that they actually ended up buying more of them post-World War II. And they really, really like them. Again, they don't get them till quite late. The Delphin, etc. Well, she's finished some point. You know, the Pipinos, the Velt, which becomes the Pipinos, is finished at some point in late 1943. I think it's around about October 1943, but I'm not 100% sure, because they're rushing them all into service, and some were in service and then commissioned, and various other things going on. And again, they don't get much chance for action, but they are being useful. They're supporting operations. They're providing the submarine support. You know, it's the assistance. Is that why everyone's selling off Runon? Because Runon's eating Nutella with a knife. Because, honestly, Runon, you should be eating it with a spoon, not a knife. You could cut yourself. You could cut your tongue. And that would be very, very weird. Really? I don't know. But yeah, the Greek boats, they get a lot of... one of the problems you have in the Mediterranean and in the the North Sea and North Atlantic as a whole is there aren't really a lot of targets for the submariners to engage. And there tend to be quite a lot of them around there, because the Royal Navy and Allies tend to operate on the policy of, if in doubt, we want to sub there. If in doubt, we want to sub there. And they work. It works well. It's a case of... one of the reasons also why the Germans very rarely surprise the Allies when they're coming out, or the Italians very rarely surprise the Allies when they're coming out, is usually there's a boat waiting off their harbour going, "Oh, hello! Am I in a position to torpedo you?" Dang, I'm not, but I'm in a position to radio someone and tell them you're coming. And then there's tent flotilla operating out of Malta and basically going, "So, your entire convoys have to run past us. Merchant and military, wherever they're going, they have to run through our area of operations. Come to us. Come to us." There is a reason why, if you look at it pound for pound, the tent flotilla's operations off Malta are possibly the most successful submarine campaign in World War II, vis-a-vis number of submarines versus number of convoys actually stopped. Steve Clarke, stop bringing politics into it. Anyway, we're at the shameless book plug. Now, shameless book plug. So we're at the sort of the midway point. And I haven't started being too rude about Norwegians yet. This is possible. This is a possibility I might get away without being too rude about them. You never know. You never know. The fact is, though, and I will say this with all the love in my heart for it, the video which is uploaded, the Long Patrol, which is uploaded to come out at some point, is quite a long one, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's an hour and 20 minutes. It's the full length they are. Oh, someone now would like the Danish-Swedish wars. I'll probably get to them. I am working my way around all the naval wars that you randomly don't hear much about, and I'm going to do more details about the Russo-Swedish wars at certain points. But it's making sure I have all the books I can about them, and trying to get more books made about them, and trying to get more books about them sent to me. And there's a friend of mine who's working on a very good book on that period. But anyway, what was I going to talk about? Ah, yes. Well, want to come say hello? While we're talking about this and talking about you, do you want to pop up and say hello to everyone? Do you want to come up? Oh, you are going to come. Hello. Oh, good boy. Yes, you are a good boy. Hello. So, some of you might have noticed, there is currently a new addition to the Spreadshirt store, which is a picture of me and a senior fluffy research assistant wandering around from the running slides. And, well, my good poodly friend here, who is a very good poodly friend, we had a conversation, and we managed to persuade another adult human in the family so there was a voting majority, that we would let them, for a short time only, see if people actually liked pictures and actually liked stuff to do with the fluffy research assistants, rather than just ships. And the plan is, if it's going to be up for roughly a month, and if enough of them sell, and I do, to quote the person in context, my dearest mother, they actually said, the phrase they actually gave was, well, if you sell 100 in a month, we'll start. You can start doing it more regularly and put more of the fluffy research assistants up. And I went, that's great, but that's a bit high. And she said, her exact words were, who do you think taught my sister? And I went, yeah, that fits. That fits, Mum. Thank you. So there should be down below, there should be the Spreadshirt store should show up as a banner across the down below the video, and there should be this one. There should be a T-shirt with the poodle on, and me on. And the thing is, that image is available on mugs, on all sorts of things, if you're interested in. And the rule is 100 items in a month, and then I can start putting more of them up there. But I would like to point out, I don't think I've sold on Spreadshirt Store in its entire history more than 30 items. And I'd say a good chunk of those were to Dan Freeman. So I doubt I'll achieve it. But you never know. You're all lovely people, and it is a lovely picture. And there's lots of other stuff in the Spreadshirt Store which I quite like. And there's going to be more there. I do keep meaning to do more designs. And Ex-Submariner, yes, I've heard of Close Quarter, and I watched the Close Quarter, and it was interesting. You're very much looking forward to Admiral Suffren. I'm looking forward to Suffren. Midway is... Well, this evening I will probably do some time on Discord to chat with everyone after the live, but not too long, because I need to go finish the re-record the last section of Midway again. And so Midway will be uploaded for Tuesday over tonight. And the Midway video is going to be roughly 2.5 hours long. And that's going to be a fun one. And then there's going to be Pertinax hopefully on Wednesday, because that should all be recorded. I should be happy with that. I might actually re-record it all with me in one shirt, so it doesn't look quite so. Because currently at the moment I have 8 shirt changes in it, because it's so chopped together from different bits. So I think it'll be re-recorded. There might be an SM2 stream as well this evening. I'm not sure. I might really try and cram stuff in. I might not. But again, Lions, I do apologise, because basically this got moved tonight because of the electrical issues. But there are things happening, and I might do Space Marine 2 for a Sunday morning just for the joy of it. And also because, honestly, the last update to UAD has caused some issues with the economy, which are really annoying me right about now. They really are. I've worked it out, but it's really annoying me. I have to do all sorts of weird games to get it to work. So that being said, let's go to H608. And believe it or not, this is not the oldest boat in use in World War II. Oh, good lord. Oh, good lord. I caramba. What can I say about this boat? What can I say about this boat? It serves the Royal Navy, the Dutch Navy, and the German Navy. Okay? And it is first laid down in 1914. It is launched in 1915 and commissioned. Launched May 1915, commissioned June 1915. It sold to the Dutch in May 1917, before World War I's even over. Consider the Royal Navy's position in World War One, towards the end of World War One. Think about how many submarines they need. Even then, they sell this boat to the Dutch. No qualms, no questions asked. It then serves with the Dutch for, well, it serves with the Dutch pretty much till 1939, when she's in maintenance and she's undergoing this upgrade. And so what they do is she can't escape during the invasion. So they decide to scuttle her. They've been using her as a training vessel, as a starting point for them throughout those 20 years for them to grow their navy. And so they scuttle her. So yes, in 1939-40, they scuttle this, realistically, they scuttle this 25-year-old boat. And you think, that's going to be the end of her career. That's going to be the end of her career. But it's not. It's not. The Germans raise her. The Germans bring her back. And they decide she can be used as a training boat. So the Germans, in World War II, are training their submariners on a 25-year-old British-built boat. Yeah. Are you confused by that? I'm confused by that. I know. But that's fun. Now, she is decommissioned 23rd of November 1943, finally because of her age. By that point, she is 28 years old. 28 years old. Hello, Italian Military Archives. Hello. How you doing? 28-year-old boat. And she scuttled again in 1945 in the harbour at Kiel. And all I can say is, at this point, I am so glad that she either had to be raised to be a museum ship, or she had to be given a Viking funeral. There is... Zacco, we're getting on to... Leave, don't mention the Norwegian boats yet. We're coming to the Norwegian boats. I'll be talking about them in a bit. I will get to the Norwegian boats. Do not worry. Because she is still not the oldest boat used in World War II. Still not the oldest boat. Still not the most out-of-the-date boat. Guess there, were German U-boats 20 years out of date compared to our sons? No, they won't. They weren't. Honestly, it's an argument between the T-class, the U-class, the O-21s of the Dutch, and... Well, no, 21 is it? I think it's the O-21s. I'll get to them in a second. And the Type 7s, which is the most advanced boat in the world at the beginning of World War II in 1939. There's also an American contender, which is not quite there. And Italian boats are also very good. But yeah, the fact is, this is really a demonstration of how short of boats the Germans are and the situation they're in, and how, frankly, unprepared for the war they were. Because there is no good reason. This boat which has literally been scuttled. You want to do diving, even in shallow waters, in a boat which has been through this amount of trauma already. I mean, I'm not sure whether I prefer to go down in a boat made of plastic or this one, but I don't think you get me on either, willingly. I don't think you would. Do you? Would they get you on them? No. You want a biscuit, don't you? You do. I know what you want. Okay, get down and I'll get you a bicky. You're a good boy. You also want... Yeah, you're good. Oh, thank you. Now, the thing is, most of the Dutch boats are a lot better than this. But one of the things you will learn very quickly is that the Dutch, the nation who most depends on their boats for deterrence, for protection, for being able to prevent people invading their territory, whether imperial or domestic, are again, for some reason, allergic to the concept of a mine-laying submarine. I mean, literally, we'll get to it. They do have two. But out of all their boats, they have two that can lay mines. Just two. Oy, caramba. Just two. That, and they're not Ks. This is the really fun thing. They're boats which are actually going to be doing colonial defence, are not the ones which have the mine layers in their numbers. They just... You just go, why? Why not? Why? Why? It's just... No. Stop licking my chair. I love you dearly. Don't lick the chair. Now, the Ks... They start with the K5s, the KVs. And the only one of those still available... This is what I find amazing. The bloomin' 08 survives. 08's still around, but K5, K6, they were decommissioned in August 1937. They've gone. There is just K7 remaining. And she's bombed by the Japanese. And that's it, basically, for her. She is bombed. And she is... They submerge her in the harbour to try and save her, but the 13 men who are aboard the boat when she's bombed die in the attack. Literally... She's there. She's lost. And there's no picture of her. There's no decent picture of her. Mine laying would have been useful. Mine laying capacity would have been useful. So, the Ks, the early Ks, K7... doesn't really count, but I'm mentioning her because she does serve with them in World War II. And then you have the KVIIs, the K8s. And remember, when they are a K in Roman numerals, they're the colonial boats. When they're the O and alphanumeric numbers, Arabic numbers, the 9, etc., and those numbers, then they are the European boats. Theoretically. Now, this includes K8, which decommissions in 1942. KX-10, which decommissions in March 1942. So, July and March. But I have here for you K9, which was, and by the way, the picture is of K10. The picture at the top there, that's what the K8s look like. This is K10. And she's in Surrey. That was a picture in Surrey in the Dutch East Indies where they operated their submarines from. And again, they are a John Philip Holland design. They are that. But K9 gets transferred to the Royal Australian Navy to act as a training boat for them to train their ASW warfare against. And she proves to be so mechanically unsound and complicated to deal with that she doesn't really accomplish much, and they get rid of her. Knight, I'm gonna give you this once today as a bit of a warning. We're on the K's. We're going to get to the O's. Bringing up the O's and asking a question about them when we're talking about the K's is jumping ahead, and if I have 2 points. I can either ignore your questions completely, which is a bit rude in my book, or I can tell you to ask them later. Or I can tell you to ask the questions when we get to the slide. And seeing as I am working through all the boats, and that's the very next slide, just wait. I've got to work through the K's first. There's plenty of them to work through. Now, the thing is, at this point, we start getting into the K's, which are what we would probably consider the capable vessels. But the thing about the K-11 class is they're all laid down in December 22, January 23, October 23. They're all launched in 24 and all commissioned 25, 26. They are not exactly young boats. They are not exactly young boats. They are good boats still, and they don't get decommissioned till, well, in K-11's case, KXI's, this one pictured here is K for X3, XII 13. She scuttled in March 42. But her sisters served till May 1944 and April 1945. And K-11XI is, well, she's used for various things, but at the end of her war service, it's not exactly a nice time for her. It really isn't. And she's decommissioned in April 1945 and then is used as a target. K-12, well, her war, she actually ends her war service as a tourist attraction in Luna Park, Sydney, and also at the Manly Fun Pier. And if you haven't been to Sydney, go there and you will get the joke about Manly, okay? But there's a storm in June 1949. The sub was being towed to less exposed waters, but the tow line broke. It drifted ashore at Fairlight, and it remained there for 18 months before being salvaged and cut up for scrap in 1951. So we lost that priceless piece of history, which had served the whole way through World War II, had potentially sunk the Toru Maru, the Awajasan Maru, and potentially the Taizan Maru. And she potentially, the really interesting thing is there's a debate between the Americans and Japanese sources which boat she sinks, and some of the Dutch sources claim she sunk both, so we'll leave that to one side. She potentially sunk all these ships. She did all sorts of duties for Dutch intelligence and landed spies on the coast of Java and all sorts of things. And yet we lost her. And they have a really interesting design, these boats. They do. They are capable of 17 knots on the surface, 8 knots submerged. They're capable of 3,500 nautical miles range of action on the surface at 8 knots. 25 nautical miles at 8 knots submerged. Again, pretty decent for Pacific. Interestingly enough, they have two 21-inch torpedo tubes in the bow and two 17.7-inch torpedo tubes in the bow. They then have two more 17.7-inch stern torpedo tubes. And there's a whole debate as to how many torpedoes they carry. And I worked this out why. It depends on how many reloads they carry for the 21-inch. Because if they carry two reloads, that's fine. Then they can carry a whole lot for the 17.7-inch. But if every two 21-inch torpedo tubes they add on after that, they lose 4 17.7-inch, it seems. Oh, there's a cannon hitting the ship for 0 bits. Hello to the sound alert. Dr. Clarke, 2 shirts down. Thank you, Lions. Thank you. Now, the thing is, that idea of having that mixed torpedo load is something the Dutch really like. And they continue it. With the K-14s, I would call them, the XIVs. And when I say they continue the design, and then they change their mind halfway through the design process. But, you know, up until that point, they've been fairly consistent, and it's going to turn up in the O's as well. But in the KXIVs, they've shifted over entirely to 21-inch torpedoes. And they have 4 bow tubes, 2 stern tubes, and 2 external traversing torpedo tubes forward of the conning tower. Now, if you're wondering, what does an external traversing torpedo tube look like? I have to say, when I read it the other day, I was looking at it going, that's fun. It is a torpedo tube, a torpedo launcher that can be rotated to different angles. And they don't tend to be loaded internally. So they're loaded externally, they're externally mounted, but they allow you to fire a wider angle, which theoretically give you some abilities to attack things. So they're useful. But saying that, they're also quite complicated and have a habit of jamming, because they are finicky pieces of tech, and they're mounted forward of the conning tower. So basically, consider them as having pretty much 6 torpedo tubes firing forward, but they've got 2 they can spread out, so they could theoretically add them to the firing of their 4 in the bow forward, and they can do a spread where they have 2 very wide, or 2 pointed inwards so that they're going to run at a cross track, or they can have ideas for how they're going to use them. Single 88mm deck gun and 2 40mm. They're armed with passive sonars, mainly passive sonars. But they are armed. They do have them. They do have systems, and they are very interesting. 2 of them, K-14 and K-15, are refitted at Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. They lose their forward 40mm AA gun at this point, and they also lose their external traversing torpedo tubes, because the American side, they can't be maintained. Once you've had this modification, they do start to look a lot like the O-21s. They really do. And this is what they looked like before their modifications. Now, interesting enough, KXVI, K-16, was sunk by I-66 on 25th December 1941. That's by a Japanese submarine. KXVII, that's K-17, strikes a mine, 21st December 1941. And then K-18, or XVII, was raised by the Japanese to be converted into a warning picket hulk, air warning picket hulk, after it had been scuttled in March 1942, but is sunk in 1945 by HMS Taciturn. That's fun. Now, 14 and 15, they both serve through the war. They serve through World War II. They do excellent service. They take part in all sorts of raids. They sink, well, number 14, K-14 alone sinks the Katori-maru, the Heihachi, and the Done-maru, and 3 others which they're not sure what their names were. They were sampans. Damaged at least 4 other boats. They did well. They did well. They were good boats, and they were good crews. They did have some problems with their torpedo supply during the war. The Dutch especially did not like some of the torpedoes they were supplied in the Pacific and the Far East. They didn't feel they were always the best. But, you know, it's what you have. And now we're on to the O-boats. The O-boats. And, how do I describe them if I'm being nice? And I'm trying to be nice. Well, the O9s are... Let's be honest, the O9 should not have still been... None of these boats. There is no earthly reason why you should have some of the boats as old as they are in service when World War II begins. I have a very firm belief about submarines, and it's a firm belief backed up by history, that submarine hulls have a half-life measured in dives they do. We do a lot of testing on submarines. This is why some submarines might leave service before others in their careers, even though those boats are left to enter earlier. It's due to the hull life, because of the stresses of diving, because of the depths they operate on, because of the realities of what they go through. Which means usually the older a boat is, the more and more its reliable depth you want to take it down to reduces. Now, the O9s again had that lovely 2 21-inch torpedo tubes in the bow, 2 17.7-inch bow torpedo tubes, and a single stern 17.7-inch torpedo tube. And again, they have fun with them. It's worth noting, O9 and O10, well, they have a fun war. They do. Their World War II service is that when they are attacked, they flee to the UK along with a tugboat. And she had to be regularly maintained, but her and number 010 patrolled the English Channel and the Bay of Biscay. Eventually, by 44, they're attached to the training flotilla in Rosyth and used as ASDIC boats, test boats. And eventually are decommissioned in December 1944 and stricken in 1945. Both those boats do well, okay? But 011, she's more fun. So, in March 1940, she's rammed by the tugboat BV3. 3 men die. The boat was raised and its repair was ordered. While it was under repair, Germany invades, so their boat is scuttled to prevent her capture. The Germans then raise the boat and order its repair. It is still being repaired, and they are still putting resources into it in 1944! Literally 4 years later, they are still trying to repair a boat which was 20 frigating years old. Because they're still short of boats. And because no one has thought that they might have wasted a huge amount of resources doing this. That it was pointless. That they should let it go. I know the Dutch built good boats, but goodness gracious, this is a 20-year-old design. Why in the name of all holy frigates are you still doing it? But they're still doing it. Proof again that Nazi Germany really knows how to waste resources. They are really good at it. And then they sink it again in Den Helder Harbour to try and block it. No, Castaneda, BV free. BV. BV free. It's a tugboat. Yeah. Hello. Yeah, it's all okay. Nah. I have perfectly good blood pressure. I just find this annoying. You know, I am all for the Germans losing World War II. It's very, very useful for me. But, yeah, there are some times you sit there and go, you guys are just making it too easy. You are making it way too easy. Oh, way, way too easy. Oh. And then we have... oh, God. Hello. Yes. Do you want to get up in my lap? Is that what you're going for? Lap time. Oh, have you got a seed in there? Okay. While we're talking to everyone, we'll get this seed out of your hair. Oh, there you go. There's that. How did that get in there? Really quite deep down in there. How do you get seeds so deep in your hair? And thank you for licking my chair. That's really helpful. You are cute. And a poodle. You're gorgeous. Now, the O-12s. They are built by 2 shipyards and are probably some of the best built submarines in their period. Built in the late 1920s. They are really, really good boats for their age. And they're really nice design. And if you're wondering which one of this wonderful chart of boats they are, they're the ones in this corner. This one. Can you let me... Right, they're currently level with the poodle's head. Here. The one at the bottom, here. Hello, yes, you're cute. Yes, you're cute. You're cute. You want a Becky? Go on, get down. I'll give you a Becky. Now, the boats had their own experiences during the war. They really did. Again, you know, there are 4 of them. They each have their own war service and their own war experience. And it's worthwhile going through them. O-12, well, she was at the Naval Wharf in Wilmsord for maintenance. She scuttled, then raised by the Germans, sent to Rotterdam for repairs. And in 1943, she's taken into service by the Kriegsmarine as UD2. And she does some patrols as UD2. She does some work as UD2. She's again one of the vessels sunk to try and protect Kiel Harbour. When you're scuttling ships to try and stop people invading your harbour, you've reached the point at which you're in trouble. You have. I know. There's Scarpa Flow, which depended on it, and no one in the interwar years had bothered to put in the concrete they needed to make it practical for actual wartime. 013, she was patrolling along the Dutch coast when Germany invaded. She attacked multiple times by German aircraft, and when I say multiple, I mean the same aircraft tried a couple of times and about a dozen other aircraft tried once. Then she sails to the UK with the Jan van Gelder. She arrives in Portsmouth and she starts being helpful immediately. She is part of the covering force in patrolling the English Channel during the evacuation of Dunkirk. She bases out of Dundee in Scotland with the other Dutch submarines, that are in service at a time. And she did her patrols up until 1940 when she's lost. There is no record of her being lost because no one that has specific unit seems to have killed 013, but she seems to have had the bad misfortune of running into a mine. There is a possibility that she ran into the same minefield which later Orzel was lost in, which potentially was lost in. There is the possibility, though, that she was rammed by the Wilk, which had reported running into an unidentified submarine on 20th of June in the early hours of the morning. But 013's gun was not mounted forward of the conning tower, and so we presume it wasn't her. And as said, Wilkes' damage most likely conforms with a minefield protector buoy rather than a submarine. And no one's found 013's wreck in the area of the reported collision. So we still don't know, and she's still referred to officially by the Dutch as still on patrol, and is the last submarine to be found. They've tried again in 2012. They still haven't found her. They still haven't found her. 14, well, she unfortunately is very, very useful and takes part in all sorts of ASDIC tests, is used to develop all sorts of systems, and actually gets fitted with various capabilities by the British. But the problem is she starts to break down in 1942, and the trouble is there's a lack of spare parts. And so that means she ends up having to be decommissioned. And the crew are transferred to HMS Sturgeon, which was renamed Zeehound, and we'll be talking about that in a bit. She does well, though. 14 does well. And then there's 15. And, well, 15 was in Curaçao for maintenance in 1940. And there was an interesting discussion between the Dutch Navy and the Royal Navy, and they decided there's no need for Dutch submarines in the Caribbean. So she goes to the UK via Kingston, Bermuda, and Halifax. They repair her diesel engines in Halifax Naval Yard, but they can't really do as well as they can do elsewhere, so she ends up going to Philadelphia. She gets various duties, taking part in all sorts of support operations until she actually crosses the Atlantic in September 1942. And then she takes part in patrols off the Norwegian coast. She's decommissioned in she uses parts from 014 to keep herself running. And she actually is decommissioned post-World War II. post World War II. She's only taken out of duty, out of active duty after the Japanese surrender. But, you know, she's a useful boat. She's a useful boat. And actually, again, as I said, they're an interesting design. They've got 4 21-inch torpedo tubes in the bow and 1 21-inch stern tube. They're useful boats. They are. But now we are on to the solitary one, which is probably the basis for the Orzals, and would explain why 17 and 18 are missing from the O's, because that would explain Orzal and Set, because they are 17 and 18, and the Dutch had given them numbers, and then they hand them over to the Polish, and so they're already continuing on with 19 at that point, so 17 and 18 never get made. Now, again, they have 4 21-inch torpedo tubes in the bow, 2 stern tubes, and 2 traversing external tubes. It's a capable boat. In 1939, it had been sent out to the Dutch East Indies to work there. But during World War II, it takes part in lots of operations as part of the British forces and does a lot of duties in the Far East. It's really quite a useful boat out there. In December 1941, so quite early in the war, she hits a Japanese naval mine near Toman Island. She'd done lots of missions in the run-up to war, lots of presence missions, lots of duties, but she hits a mine near Toman Island, while leaving the Gulf of Siam. And it was only her quartermaster who survived, who swam to Dang Island, eventually got in contact with the Dutch Navy, managed to get back to Singapore. Her wreck was found. Unfortunately, and this is a very, very annoying thing which happens with wrecks which have pre-Nagasaki and pre-Hiroshima and Nagasaki steel. In 2013, there was a crane vessel photographed dredging the wreck. And this is one of the reasons why, honestly, now we're not necessarily keen on always revealing the positions of these vessels. But just remember, her war starts in the Far East, officially starts on 7th December 1941. She is lost on the 15th December 1941. We know she sunk the Tosen Maru, the Essen Maru, and the Kinka Maru in that period, and she damaged the Etoshan Maru on both the 11th and 12th of December in that period. She did well. She had a good crew. It is pre the Trinity test as well. But usually we joke, we just use Hiroshima and Nagasaki for some reason. I know it's pre-Trinity test, but yeah. It's pre-nuclear bomb steel. Which is valuable. But it's a war grave. It's literally desecrating a war grave. What can I say? Morality, ethics, and money. Never a good combination. And finally we get on to the O-19s, these boats. There are 2 of them produced. And they are the mine-laying submarines. These are finally their mine-laying boats. Finally. Originally laid down as KXIX and XX, but late renamed O-19 and O-20. Originally named for colonial service and then made domestic. Either way, why has it taken so many boats and so long to get onto something which is capable of laying mines? Dutch, honestly, please, why? Why? I love you. You're a beautiful people. I have good friends who come from you. I have spent many pleasant hours walking through your very nice vistas and your excellent canals. Why did you take so frigging long? Because, imagine some of these boats, if they'd been able to lay minefields before they'd been gone, or when they'd been used, they'd seriously have choked them up. They're good submariners, they've got good boats. If they could do that capability, oh my god, they would have been lethal. They'd have choked up the German war effort, the Japanese war effort, they'd have ground them all into things, but they don't build them! Until these two boats. Until these two boats. Now, O20 is scuttled, sunk on the 19th of December 1941, so that kind of tells you what happens to her career. But O19, oh, she has a very different time. She does many patrols during World War II. And she is very, very successful. She sinks a lot of ships and she lays a lot of mines, which cause a lot of trouble. At one point, O19 is reckoned by the USN to be the most effective asset, pound for pound, they have in Task Force 71. And that is something to be proud of. Task Force 71 were their submarines operating from Fremantle under Charles Lockwood and then later by Ralph Christie. And if the Americans are rating you as one of their best pound for pound or the best pound for pound boat they have under their command, that tells you something. That tells you something. Now, in July 1945, she's en route to Subic Bay when she hits the Lad Reef in the South China Sea. She's unable to pull free. The crew are rescued by USS Cod, which is of course a Gato class. And to prevent her capture because she's considered that valuable an asset, both crews scuttle her using explosives, torpedoes, and gunfire to make sure she's gone. She's a good boat. She's got four 21-inch bow tubes. She's got four 21-inch stern tubes. She's got those 2 sets of external mine tubes. External amidships. Capable of carrying 20 mines. They're good. And yes, there is the argument the Dutch do use surface ships for mine laying, and they do have a lot of them, but that's actually, to me, shows how important mine laying was to the Dutch as their capability. It was a critical part of their force structure. It was a critical part of their war effort, so you'd think they'd think about their submarines using it, because their submarines are a critical part of their war effort and a critical capability, and they want to use their surface ships to do it, and let's be honest, if the surface ships are doing the closer ones, are doing defensive mining, and the submarines are doing offensive mining, you actually have a chance of doing a lot of mining. And mines can be useful. They can really maximize the effect of a small force. They really can. But she's a good boat. She is a good boat. And with that being said, we now end up on the last of them. The O-21s. Possibly some of the most advanced boats, these ones, in the world when World War II starts. Possibly some of the most advanced submarines in service in 1939. And they have the description that I always give them is that they're based off the O-19s, but they have no mine laying capability because that allows them to be a smaller, more streamlined hull, which means they can achieve a higher surface speed, and that was the advantage. Now, they want them to dive 20 meters deeper than previous classes, including the O-19s. They have the same torpedo arrangement as the O-19s. They have 88mm deck gun, 240mm air guns, etc. They have all these cables. They're capable of doing 28 nautical miles at 8.5 knots submerged. They've got 10,000 nautical miles at 12 knots on the surface. They are good boats. They're capable of nearly 20 knots, 19.5 knots, pretty precise is what they're officially capable of, surfaced and 9 knots submerged. They are fast boats. The thing is, 4 of the boats, 21, 22, and 24, and 23, all get dragged across to the UK because they're partially complete and they are sent to the UK. With the tugboat, O-22 and 21 go together with BV-37, the tugboat, and takes them across. Then they're completed in the UK, and then they do operations in the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean, Fremantle, and serves the whole way through World War II. Does a good job. Same, 22 spends most of her war in the North Sea. She's lost in 1940. We're not quite sure where what scenario led to her loss, but her wreck was discovered in 1933 by the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate, and yeah, she seems to have been serving well, but she's lost. 23, well, she sold for scrapping in April 1949, which tells you pretty much all you need to know about her. She has a very similar experience. She sailed directly from the UK to directly from her yard, the Rotterdam yard, the RDM yard in Rotterdam, to Thornycroft in Southampton, and gets completed there. She makes 20 patrols during the war, sinks 5 ships, and she sinks an Italian tanker, Japanese merchant ships, various Japanese transport ships and army ships. She does well, again. And 24, well, how do I put about her? She sold for scrapping in 1963 after being stricken in 1962. She serves, and really does serve, throughout the war. And when we say sinks several ships, she numbers Italian tankers and Japanese coasters and all sorts of different vessels under her list. She does, again, really quite well. 24 war patrols in total. She mainly operates with British Mark IV and Mark VIII torpedoes. I think at some point she does get G7A torpedoes, but I'm not sure when that is issued to her. There's a whole debate about that. I think it's, she has fun. Is he off to bed?
Not yet.
What's he looking in it for?
I just wondered if it's alright, I've just seen
I find my sister strange sometimes. She literally opens the door, looks in, and I'm just going, what's the problem? Just seeing what you've done today. Fun times? In my office talking to all of you. I have no idea. Sisters. Let's see. The rest of the boats, well, O25 gets commissioned as UD3, O26 gets commissioned as UD4, and O27 gets commissioned as UD5. Oh, it was very fun, the trips. And these boats had all been in a position where they couldn't be towed to the UK. And in many cases, again, they are commissioned by the Kriegsmarine, and the Kriegsmarine uses them, more often than not, it seems, to patrol the coast of Norway. A lot of them seem to get posted to the various facilities to patrol the coast of Norway and provide various support for various other operations. But one of the interesting things about these Dutch vessels, these Dutch-built vessels, is that when it comes to successes, these three boats, between them, achieve 2 successes. And in the case of UD5, aka O27, she's literally captured again, returned to the Dutch after the victory against Nazi Germany, and she is commissioned again in July 1945, and isn't stricken until 1959. She does well. She does well. Now, what I would like to point out is that the Dutch, by far, have built and used the most submarines. I think we can all experience of the minor powers. They are by far, and by every stretch of reality, the most knowledgeable when it comes to submarines. So, here's the question I thought. When I was putting it together, I was going, I'm going to be really interested to see what submarines they pick from the Allies to use. Because so far, pretty much everyone pumps for U's and V's. Occasionally, there's been an American boat there, but it's U's and V's, U's and V's. So what are the Dutch going to pump for? Because they've got the crews, they escape with the personnel, they have the capability. What are they going to pick? What are they going to pick? And in true Dutch fashion, because as we know, they don't get invaded. Major wars don't kick off when they order ships. They kick off when they decide they're going to order them. They get a U, an S, and a T. And strange enough, they really love the T-class. They order them post-war. They get more post-war. This is why when people start telling me the T-class weren't that advanced, they weren't that good, and all this thing, I sit there and go, the Dutch, the most submarine-focused of the minor powers post-war, are buying T-boats. They wouldn't be doing that if they didn't think they're worthwhile. They're not that desperate. They want them. They want boats. But they're not so desperate they'll buy anything. They buy a U, an S, and a T. They have the Dolphin, the Zeehound, and the Zwaarder. And one of those becomes a class. Now, it's P-47, previously, when she's built, but then she's renamed HMLS Dolphin. The Dutch do decide, previously you might notice, they're not naming their boats. Then they're working with the Royal Navy, they suddenly start naming their boats. Why? Because once you're getting ships which have names, it's even worse to take their names away from them than it is to just give them a new name, or a Dutch name. Again, she's a typical U-class vessel. And she actually sinks Perla's sister, you know, the boat which ends up working for the Greeks. That was Italian. She sinks Macalite near Spartavento, Sardinia, when the Macalite was on the surface. She does all sorts of operations throughout World War II. and is a really useful boat. And serves with the Dutch Navy till 1946, only being scrapped in 1952. They love her. Then you have HMS Sturgeon, which becomes HMS Zeehound, or HNLMS Zeehound. And her service with the Dutch is, again, quite interesting. They've got this boat, what are they going to use it for? She conducts anti-submarine patrols in Norwegian Sea on her first patrol. It's uneventful. But eventually, she takes on her second patrol off the Norwegian coast in March 1944. She gets recalled on 21st of March, and she spends most of her time conducting training exercises. And the interesting thing about Zeehound is she's the only one of the first four of the S-class submarines to survive the war. Because the S-class are mauled in World War II. And it's, again, not because they're bad boats. It's because at a crucial time, they can do pretty much everything. They're 70% jobs for pretty much every mission. So we send them because they can do pretty much anything. So we'll give them a go. They're better than nothing. And they do. They give them a go. Svardash, well, again, she transfers to the Royal Dutch Navy in 1943, and she is used for SOE operations primarily. She did manage to sink 6 ships, including the minor Itsukishima and the U-168. She did well. She did really well. And the Dutch liked them. They found the T-class to be fundamentally a very, very good class of boats to keep going. They considered their advantages in technology were they were fundamentally quite reliable and quite easy to maintain. And of course, they do have even in this version have the advantage of having 8 torpedo tubes in the bow and 3 in the stern to have 11 21-inch torpedo tubes. And carrying 19 torpedoes as well. 11 stowed. 11 in the tubes and 8 in 8 to reload them. They did good. The Dutch actually had kept being offered U-class and S-class, but they kept holding out for T-class boats. And the government in exile keeps requesting Admiralty for T-class boats. They are really happy with them, and they get, as I said, more of them. They like them. But the reason I haven't included Tigahai in service, because she doesn't go and join the Dutch till the 6th of April 1945, and by the time she actually enters service, she doesn't really able to achieve that much. In fact, her only claim to fame is that she was tied up inboard of HMS Sidon when Sidon suffered a torpedo malfunction and sank herself. And they get more on the Svardash class. They get more boats later on, yes. But they enjoy them. They're good class. They're a good class of boats. And I have tried to be nice for as long as I can. And I'm going to apologise now because I'm not going to be nice much longer. Okay, so here's the thing. When you look up this class, you'll find there's A5 as well, and you'll go, hang on, Alex, that boat's captured by the Germans. Why aren't you talking about that? Because that boat is captured by the Germans before delivery. In World War I, these boats literally were being delivered to Norway before World War I. Literally were being delivered to Norway before World War I. They were UA type German submarines. They are quite literally, by World War II, and by the time they are being invaded, not just 26-year-old boats, 27-year-old boats. They are quite literally 30-year-old designs. They are, I kid you not, the oldest boats I have found anywhere in service, actively in service, in any nation in World War II so far. If I am wrong, please correct me. I will be glad to know. But, and it is worthwhile considering this, these boats try their hardest to equip themselves well, and yet, frankly, they are not in any situation to do so. They are not. Quite literally. They are attacked and pretty much sunk / captured in short order. 2, A3 and A4 are scuttled by their own crews because there is no point. A2 is damaged by 2 R-class minesweepers. The R-22 and 23 are boats off the Valor Peninsula near Tonsberg, and their crew are then captured as she drifts ashore. That's the 9th of April 1940. 2 more boats, the A3 and A4, are literally scuttled in the 16th of April 1940. They do not want to take them out further. They had 3 18-inch torpedo tubes. They displaced 270 tons on the surface, 342 tons submerged. They could do 14 knots on the surface theoretically, 9 knots on the underwater submerged. They required a crew of 16. They were useful boats in World War I. I will concede they are useful boats in World War I. But these are not them. These are also not the mine-laying variety of boats, which were far more successful in World War I. And they were... Again, this is the classic thing with the Norwegian government, and I would love to say it's something which ended after World War II. That after the World War II, the Norwegian government reformed. The Norwegian government decided from now on we will be better. We will invest in our armed forces. We will serve our nation. But no, they didn't. These boats are classic thing of, if someone asked the question, Norwegian government, do we have submarines? Yes, we have this many boats. If anyone asks the question how effective they are, they probably go, they're fine boats, fine. They are not. These were not in any way, shape, or form effective. And it's not as if there aren't options. If they don't want to build them themselves, they can buy them from the Dutch, the French, as other nations have in this video, as you've seen. Pardon me. There are boats going round. Let's put it this way. They are literally a quarter of the size of most of the boats we've been talking about. Ulla class. Zacco, we will get to the Ullas. We will get to them. Or rather, oh, you're talking about the Ullas as in the new design, the designs in service now, not the Ulla that comes later in this. Let's leave it be. We will get to the Norwegian boats later in World War II. 1981, they're not training boats. They are still being used as boats because they don't have anything else to replace them. I realize people keep going, the smaller boats, they're training boats. They're not. You might use them to help with training and ASW training and all these things, but you don't have anything to replace them in their active role. They are still part of your active force. The Norwegian government, honestly, and I've discussed this more in the recorded video, honestly, the Norwegian government doesn't believe there's ever going to be another war, so they don't believe they have to invest, because why spend the money when there's not going to be another war? Because World War I has meant no one wants another war like that, so no one will ever go to war again. Too late, they recognise it. And then you have the B class. Then you have the Bs. Now, how do I put this politely about the B? The B class are United States L-class submarines built on license by Norway. Okay, so they build them on license. Fine. They build them on license. They build 6 boats. They build 6 boats. B1 through to 6. And they are good boats. They are. But what happens to them? Well, B1 manages to flee to Rosyth, managed to get there. It gets to Rosyth in Scotland in June 1940 from Narvik, and that is where it goes to. B2 is captured by the Germans. B3 is captured by the Germans. B5 is captured by the Germans. B6 is captured by the Germans. B6 is used as a training ship for a couple of years and then is broken up, quite literally. You might be going, Alex, come on, the Germans use everything. Look at how old the Dutch boat they used. Well, let's consider the L class of the US Navy and what exactly had happened to these vessels in their conversions in the build of Germany. They have the capacity to carry 4 18-inch torpedo tubes. And, not sure, they had a crew of 23. They were 365 tons on the surface, 545 tons submerged. These are not big boats. These are really not big boats. And look at them. They are literally built between, they are literally built between 1922 and 1929. 4 boats are built, enter service in 1923. 3 boats enter service in 1923, 1 in 1922, and then 2 more, B5 and B6, enter service in 1929. And the honest question is, why? Why not buy a different design? Why? Yes, you've built 4 of them. You are now going to wait 6 solid frigging years. Buy another design. License another design. Build something else. They just... No. Good luck, Leslie. Take care. Enjoy the Manchester Takai tournament. Get calm. Yeah, this we have almost finished the Norwegians. We'll be answering questions soon. Norwegians, after this, finally the Norwegian crews get boats worthy of them, and they are British UNV class, Ulla, Ured, and Ustria, and they do well. They really do well. They do. They do well, and they are good boats. They are. They're good boats. They served with a 9th Submarine Flotilla during World War II from Dundee, and they work well for the Ulla is the boat which of the Allies is often thought to have, well, argued of the Allied nations, definitely to have sunk the most boats. But during World War II. She does a lot of work. She's commissioned in 1941. She did a lot of operations. She was christened by King Haakon VII himself. And yeah, she operated in the Atlantic Ocean, Channel, North Sea, up in the coast of Norway. She does SOE operations. She does all sorts of things. The memorial up there is to her sister, Ured. And Ured was, how do I put this politely, lost in 1943. She was on a mission to land special Norwegian Independent Company troops in Bodo, basically as part of the SOE operations. They were going to sabotage a power station, or rather, sabotage the power supply to the Norwegian mines as part of Operation Seagull. And it turned out the information that the fjord was not mined was wrong, and she hits a mine. And all the personnel aboard are lost. All the personnel are lost. It seems to have got hit by a mine near the engine room, so what possibly happened with it as it was going along was the mine got caught on one of the cables, and then that brought it down, and that would bring it down on its engine room. But we're not 100% sure. And that's the memorial erected to them in Harksovnvern. And I actually looked at the memorial and was considering if we could get there as part of the Scandi ship tour, but we couldn't get there. We have talked about the Orzel. So, with that being said, and with it now being 0240 hours into this video, I'm going to do a little bit of... I'm going to start up the question-answer section, or the comment response bit. I'm going to start up the bot. Hopefully it's going to work. There could be a lot of people streaming tonight, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are issues with it. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll start it up. And then, once it's active and the bot's all up and loaded and it's partially connected, let's see. It's having fun with connecting to Twitch today. Both the broadcasters are having fun, YouTube and Twitch. Now got YouTube broadcaster connected and Twitch broadcaster is finally connected. All four are green. So let's see. Bot on. And I will check Discord to see if it's working. It seems to be working on Twitch. And for those who've never seen this before, basically if you put exclamation mark question, it gets scooped up by a bot is the theory. And if it works, and that bot then puts it in, stores it in a queue where I can go and quickly can pull it out of the queue, and so I don't lose questions. And question received on Twitch, definitely. YouTube doesn't seem to be working. Okay, well, I'll try and grab questions from YouTube then. We'll see if that's going to work, because it's gone green the bot for YouTube, but it's not necessarily... That doesn't always mean it's connected in. Twitch is working, but YouTube isn't on bot collection, on bot work. Ah, well. Twitch tends to work quite well. But still, we'll put questions live up and yeah. Okay. Okay, YouTube Minecraft Watcher. Well, your question's coming on Twitch, so I've managed to grab that. Abuse of mainstream media. Are you going to do something similar about French submarines? This was a patron requested video, so if patrons requested it, yes, but otherwise probably not until the year of the submarines, and then I'll do stuff. But I'm lurgy about doing too much detail about subs and all these things and going into too much detail because I am planning the year of submarines in the future. But yeah, we'll get there. At the mod and will transfer. Oh, thank you. That's nice. The mods are helping out. YouTube Minecraft Watcher. What if the Dutch for the colonial submarines had a said design and built to the Type 9 U-boat in 1930? Except it has a snorkel and Torpex torpedoes. Well, they have excellent submarines, but they still have issues. And if they are building them to that level, then they have a few of those good boats available, but that doesn't really change matters for them. The main big problem, they have some great boats. That's not going to change anything really for the Dutch. It's going to give them some very good long-range boats that they're probably going to use to cause havoc in the Far East. But there's only going to be like 3 or 4 boats out there that can do it. They can do it with, and so that's what. How much extra damage will 3 or 4 extra long-range boats do? Not much. Polymus has got NK33s. Did anyone look at buying Japanese subs? No, and the Japanese weren't really advertising their subs. it would have been interesting, but no one seemed to do it. When is the year of submarine? I think the year of submarines probably. It looks to me it's probably going to be 2028. Probably going to be 2028. That's probably when I'm looking at doing it, but we'll see. And that sounds weird to be saying in advance, but that's because next year is going to be probably. Well, we haven't. Considering what year we have had. We haven't had. I think we've not. Don't think we've had the year of the destroyers, and we haven't had the year of the sloops and corvettes. We've had the year of the cruisers. We've had the year of the aircraft carriers. We've had quite a thorough look at battleships, and I think we've had the year of the battleship. I'm not sure if we've had the year of the battleship. This is the year of leadership. We've done the year of technology. We're sort of 5 years into the years scenario. Not sort of 4 years in the year of scenarios. So it's working out what it's going to be. Thank you, Steve. For these SMT class photos, I have some you can use. When we get to the year of submarines, I will probably ask you for them. But at the moment, not until I'm a little bit more organised here. And preferably until once I have what I call my elephant, and what other people call network assisted storage, but I call an elephant setup. Because it never forgets. No. Quintuple ads? Goodness gracious me, that's a lot of ads. YouTube Minecraft watchers, if the USA have instead built extra Gatto class submarines for the small navies, again, when are they going to come in? It gives them some extra boats. Great. If they make use of them, that's going to help, but it's... Honestly, for the Allies, the trouble is, outside of the Mediterranean, where you really want smaller boats, U's and V's, those sort of vessels, and outside of the Pacific, where you're using them to strangle the Japanese, the submarines aren't really that helpful, because the Allied navies are mostly in the business of sea control, and it's the Axis navies who are in the business of sea denial. Okay? That's the thing. The submarine is an excellent sea denial tool, but it's not an excellent sea control asset. Let's get up the Cuban class. If I remember correctly, they were quite good boats. Yeah. They were the Norwegian, Danish, and Polish versions of... Well, now the Polish. I think. Because they were transferred in later on, but they started on Norwegian, Danish versions of the Type 207s, weren't they? They were built for Norway, and then some were given to Denmark, Denmark for their service. But yeah, they're good boats. They are good boats. But it's interesting to realise that the Norwegians have a high point. They build 15 boats. That's useful. They've got a useful number. And then the Ulla class come in and they've got 6. And now they're building the U212s to replace them, and they're building 6 again. And you sit there and go, okay. The thing is, you're getting 6 to replace 6, and you had 15. Basically, the Coburn class are very good for their time. And Ustine, well, she's a cool vessel. She's a cool boat. We had a lot of fun in Norway, and we had a lot of fun in Sweden, looking at their submarines. We missed the Horten Naval Museum in Norway, which we should have done. We should have actually gone to and spent more time in. but we missed it. It's a good museum to go to. It's one I've got on my list, but it just didn't fit in with the rest of the trip, sadly enough. It's one of those scenarios whereby they had a good reaction. They got enough boats, and then they don't. They constantly cut themselves off. As in, which of these navies had the best ASW doctrine? Probably the Dutch. Probably the Dutch. The Dutch are definitely the best by a long way. They certainly are the ones who work hardest at it. Castana, did any South American powers have subflight others in World War II? Yeah. Yes. I think, from memory, I think, which boats were they operating? Yeah, I'm trying to remember which boats the Brazilians were operating at that point. But a lot of the South American navies are looking at them and they have quite a lot of capabilities. Yeah, the Brazilians have a modified Balia class submarine that's built by the Italians for them. And they bought that because they sold the Marshal Deodoro, a coastal defense ship, to the Mexican Navy. And I think there are other operators as well. The Chileans have quite a good squadron. They have some H-class boats, which are British H-class. Again, they're older boats, but they do have them. The Finnish had some good submarines. But you go through World War II, you do find there's a lot of submarines in service, and a lot of nations have them, because they're useful assets, they're sea denial assets, they're basically a mobile minefield, and if you're in the business of coastal defense and security, that's what you want. That's what you need. Basically, how much is a ferry ticket in Norway to visit museums? Probably more expensive than the plane flight, but it's the hotels and the stuff out there that kills you. From experience of going through Scandinavia. Norway! You've remortgaged your house how many times? Sweden! Just one remortgage necessary. That's good. And then Finland. Oh, good! It's just unsecured credit card debt, not a full remortgage of the property. Team Locker, the finished ones are more than German prototypes. Once you start looking through them, they are very close to German prototypes, and very close to German vessels, and have very similar systems. Yeah. You can use you can watch the videos of us playing with the engines under guidance on the Norwegian, on the Finnish vessel, and use it to turn on the German vessels. But we'll leave that to one side. YouTube microphone. How big of an impact would it have been if the Dutch had submarines had on December 22nd, 1941, caught the Kieler Bertine transit to Truck and presumably sank some or all of them, the carriers? If they'd done that, that would pretty much paused the Japanese advance. Because if they lose, as you point out, Shikaku, Zukaku, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, if they lost those 5 vessels to Dutch submarines in December 1941, that is going to change a lot of their operating parameters, because now American carriers can pretty much operate freely, and capital ships can operate pretty much freely. It's going to change a lot of the things that are going to force the Japanese back quite a lot. There's going to be no carrier raid on Australia, etc. It would have been a major embarrassment for the IJN, but it's not beyond the Dutch capabilities. The Dutch are very good. Very, very capable. Very capable personnel, and very capable, very skilled at what they do. I'm getting the idea that for brew ships, I'm going to need to have saved up a few cans. I think I'm going to have to be on a policy that I'm allowed, I've got 48 cans, which means I'm allowed a maximum in any 30-day, in any sort of week of 10 cans, and I need to save about 4 for a Thursday and 4 for a Friday. Oh no, 4 for a Sunday. Fedoris, if you can put that in a... Oh, it's been passed over by Paul, don't worry. Because then I can read it more clearly. Doctor, if you were to procure submarines that tilt for your country, how much money would you need to be bribed? I want to contrast this with what our own politicians took. In nicest way, I will never claim I can't be bought, but I will claim that if you want to bribe me, you'd better give me enough wealth that it's multi-generational, and I can move to a country with no extradition and live and secure multiple generations happily, and an extended family happily. So we're talking billions upon billions of pounds in modern day money. I mean, basically, you'd have to give me the cash equivalent of what the good Mr. How do I put it? Well, I was going to say good in typical British sarcastic fashion. Just worried how that might come across, but I'm just going to say as Mr. Musk has required. That's about the level you'd require for me. So I could set up my family in many generations in multi-generational wealth and happiness. Basically enough cash that I can move to Switzerland and become immediately a most honoured citizen and guest. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Basically, I'm going to have 2 cans for the rest of any other day in the week if I needed them. And I'm going to have 4 cans for Thursday and 4 cans for Sunday. Goodness gracious me, how am I going to get through lives? Because the trouble is, water doesn't help me with speaking, because I find water actually doesn't help my voice when speaking. Thank you, Mark Hartness. If you can put them in Discord with the links to them, I'll track them down and have a look and see if I can actually use them. So you're saying the Norwegians are the template for the Albanian Navy? Yeah, actually worse, because they know they're not buying good quality vessels. They know they're not buying good quality. That's the problem. They know their A and B type are terrible designs. They know they're not up to standard at all. They can go point them and go, look, we have 9 boats. I don't have enough for 2. No. What I'm saying, Lions, is I have 48 cans to get me through roughly 4 weeks. Okay? So roughly, I can have 4 on a Thursday and 4 on a Sunday when I have lives. I have 2 more cans for other days of the week. So I have 10 cans I'm able to use in any week period. Luckily, I have a bottle for tomorrow. So this only really starts on Monday. Rat, I don't think naval history and iron brew would... Hang on, no, I've got that much money. Yeah, I could buy an island and start my own country. But there again, then I'd have to take care of my own defense from people trying to extradite me. And this is the thing. The SBS, SAS are very good. If I'm in Switzerland, I'm protected by more than just hired mercenaries. I'm protected by international relations. And honestly, in the argument between the SBS, SAS, and mercenaries, I will take international relations and British governments any day. Gotta say, it would have been an interesting change World War II if the Japanese invasion fleet for either Malaya or Philippine Islands ran into the Dutch war flag. It did! That's the thing. They ran into that, the one boat I was talking about that ends up getting sunk quite quickly. And, and they lose, like, three ships sunk and one damaged heavily. On the 11th and 12th of December. She herself is lost on the 15th of December by a mine. It's just a case of, okay, the Dutch did very, very well. The Dutch are good boats. Did Australia have any subs in World War II? They did and they didn't. Oh no, Zaka. I'm not the only modern class are the sleeper class destroyers, and let's be honest, the sleeper class in terms of the Norwegian Navy are they're called modern. They are called modern, but the fact is they're also called destroyers, and they displace 735 tons. Everyone else would call them a torpedo boat. There is, when you're armed with 3 4-inch guns, one 40mm Beaufort AA gun, a Colt anti-aircraft machine guns, 2 of them, and 2, I think they're 21 or maybe 23-inch torpedo tubes. They are not that modern, and they're commissioned 950. They're torpedo boats. They are torpedo boats. And that's what the Germans actually classified them as. They're not destroyers. Oh, you've been into the Tromsø K system. It is cool. And yeah, there's all sorts of interesting things in there. There is. Right. What is now? This is from YouTube Minecraft. What if the Dutch in 1940 had constructed a mine layer sub per year? So they had 10 boats. Would it help the Allies in war? Yes. In nicest way, if the Dutch are laying minefields with their submarines at as many as they could with 10 boats, and let's say they got 5, 6 out there, probably would have more out in the colonies than would have back in Europe. That would have been tremendously problematic because the Dutch boats could have gone in, laid mines in places with, they don't have to worry about air attack. They can go in, lay a mine, go off and be a torpedo attack, and then the Japanese amphibious forces run into mines. They run into mine forces. That's the thing. The mines can cause more damage, and it's also the delay. If you think there's a high risk of mines in an area, you are delayed while your minesweepers check the area before you get in there. Minecraft Watcher, what if the USN had a bright spark and put the pieces together and built a Type 21 equivalent submarine? Would it help the Allies? Again, Minecraft Watcher, as I keep saying, submarines are sea denial weapons. Which is great if you're doing the sea denial operations. They're not sea control. And that's the thing. The Allies were in the business of sea control, in the business of using the sea for amphibious operations, etc. Yes, some more sea denial weapons and some better ones would be helpful in the early stages of war against Japan. Yes, they could be useful in various, operations. But one of the reasons why occasionally the Royal Navy submarines get completely overlooked in World War II is most of the time they are sitting there waiting for the Germans to come out. And that's their problem. When the Germans come out, they pounce on our everything, but there just isn't that many of the Germans coming out. And it's the same with, it's the problem for the Allies. There isn't much to sea denial away from their opponents. Yep, for me, exactly. Sending in a super still also means you need surface support, which can prompt a Heligoland Blight star battle, which can go either way and could cause all sorts of trouble. There's also the thing of what submarines might do, especially these Dutch submarines, is they could lay mines in one spot. You could therefore go, we find mines, okay, let's go the other rate, and the submarine's waiting the other way with torpedoes to go fire a spread of torpedoes into you. It's an ambush predator with the ability to ambush them further away. And, they do develop all sorts of boats, but it takes time. Now, Doris, I know there's a few videos of you playing Hoi 4. Any chance of you making a dedicated video about what to get right and what to get wrong? I might do that at some point. I might do that. More likely to do that as a Twitch stream, but might do that as a recorded video, especially in the Christmas period this year. If someone puts their notes, I'll remember it for the Christmas specials, because I do all sorts of videos in extra in Christmas. And that's usually where I chuck in things like that, which are just going to be a bit of extra fun. Pack of 48 is all I'm allowed by my diet. That's all I'll allow myself. It also saves money. And at the moment, fingers crossed, house sale goes through. Someone else has come in and has put in an offer. Fingers crossed the Epsom house goes, because I honestly, and this is me speaking quite honestly too, the trouble is I have to go up quite regularly to Epsom. I have to drive up, look at the house, come back, the hotels on the way there and that, and all these things, and because the pneumonia means I'm still recovering from that pneumonia, and I can't do really more than 3 hours driving before I start to cramp up, and so I stop, and it's ruining me financially at the moment. I cannot afford to keep going backwards and forwards as much as I'm doing. I'm not able to do research trips or anything because I just don't have the free cash at the moment, and I can't take on. It's going to sound strange. I can't take on other work because I have to keep going up and down there. And so I'm doing all the consultancy work I can, all that stuff, and there's other things going on with the consultancy firm. So that's causing fun. So I'm probably going to be setting up my own independent consultancy soon, but we'll leave that to one side. That's all in the works, and things are in the works. What's your opinion of the Dutch Dolphin class, 1954? The Dolphins. They're good boats. They're good boats for their time. There's some great plans available for them. They got space in them. They're good. They're interesting interesting hulls. Very interesting hulls. Ooh. They got a main pressure hull and 2 sub-pressure hulls. Those are cute boats. That's a cute design. 4 tubes forward, 4 tubes aft. Definitely interesting boats. Looks quite capable. Looks quite good. They built 4 of them, basically, because the Potvers class are basically continuations of them. Slightly differential, but not that different. They do have quite a good man-laying capability built into them. Fitted for mine laying via the torpedo tubes. Yeah. Good boat. 3-cylinder subs, of course, on it. And that's, but yeah. Interesting pictures of design and construction. I might do some videos about post-war. That's the thing. When I do the year of the submarine, I'll be able to do submarines from the beginning to the end, and I'll do a lot of these construction these vessels. These post-World War II boats are some interesting designs because they do represent a lot of the thought process and developments during the wars. Thank you, Skifter. Thank you, Emilska. Random persons doing some gift subs. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, it is, in nicest way, running 2 houses is unaffordable on our incomes. That's the thing. It's unless we want to go into debt or this. We're not a family that runs 2 houses to be living. We're not. It's just you have to be quite wealthy to be able to afford to run 2 houses, 2 sets of council tax, 2 sets of things, and having to go visit it quite regularly to check on it, make sure it's okay, make sure it's not moulding up or anything. It's all been fine, but yeah. Have I tried pomegranate tea? No, I don't like tea. I know I'm British and I don't like tea. I don't like coffee either. I like coffee. I like coffee ice cream, and I like a lot of coffee cake and all those coffee tasting things. But for some reason, I don't like coffee itself, the drink. Just never have. What about Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia submarines? I haven't added them in, but they would be a whole different video to talk about because you really can't talk about Estonia subs without talking about Finland subs, and you can't really talk about, again, they're most of these countries, they're building them in concert because they've all got the common enemy, the Soviets. Honestly, every single watcher is someone. How did someone do a lot of subs on Twitch? Let me just, because it didn't flash up and do its usual thing of shouting at me when that happens. Because for some reason it's gone into theatre mode. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I just realised that there's been a lot of subs given. Thank you. Yeah, I look, I do drink more than Iron Brew. I have occasionally been known to sample, well, when I was in, especially when I was in Scandinavia, there wasn't many good Iron Brew supplies, so I had to drink a lot of other things as well. But, I do drink, Iron Brew is what I normally drink, and occasionally hot chocolate. Occasionally people will find me drinking a hot chocolate. If I need a hot drink, that's what I go to. Thank you, Jack Ray. Goodness gracious me. But yeah, it's a lot of memberships coming in this evening. Thank you. It's one of the things of you sort of realize video channels at my level, and this is something I'll say for all content creators. When you're, and this is something also which, to be quite up with content creators I know who are big to me, when you are below about 200,000 subscribers, anything below that, your income is pretty from YouTube is pretty much memberships and super chats and super thanks. The amount of money you get from advertisements is very small, but if you don't turn it on, the algorithm for some reason doesn't work. Can't think why. So thank you. That does mean so much. We'll get an episode about Soviet subs in World War II. I've done a video about the Soviet Navy in World War II, and that it includes some discussion of submarines. And again, if people want to put it in as a Patreon question, I'm happy to do it in general. But also, as said, there is going to be the year of submarines coming up, so that's going to be there in a few years. And I like doing submarines, but the trouble is there aren't many action shots from them. And I do know from my experience with YouTube, if I can put an action shot of a ship charging through waters, that gets far more pics in the thumbnails for some reason. Can't think why. But again, happy to if people put them as Patreon questions, and Patreon will be going live for September, October. Patreon will be going live because in September and October the only lives will be the Sundays on brew ships. Because of hopefully traveling to Japan, all those things which will be announced also soon. All the details for that. Because that way then I can make sure everything's prepped before we go. And all the videos in the rest of the week will be premieres. So there'll be a premiere Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays throughout that period. So there'll be 4 premieres a week while we'll go during that. So there's going to be 16, and brew ships on Sunday. Right then. I will answer off the last questions, and then I will go check the dogs are all in bed, and then I'll pop into Discord. So I'll be there for about half an hour to chat away with people. I do like to do roughly half an hour of open questions after every live, and I think I've done that this evening. But I'll answer these questions, so yeah, we will now go to questions closed. Thank you. And right then. So YouTube Minecraft Watch. How did the Dutch supply the submarines in the Pacific after the fall of the Netherlands? A lot of adaptations, a lot of work with the British and the Americans to try and get parts built. I expect, and one of the reasons why the Dutch end up going over to Royal Navy boats, and one of the reasons why a lot of the Allied those that mine allies end up turning over to Royal Navy boats, is because they run out of spare parts, and there's only so long you can keep the older boats going for. So that's their problem. It is getting the spare parts. It is getting them. Which was the last of the UNV class boats in service? Ooh. That's something I'd have to look up, because I think it is a month between them, and I'm doing a book on the U class, so I really should remember, but you know. They serve for a long, long time. A lot of them serve in the Royal Danish Navy. A lot of them serve in the Danish Navy. Quite a few of them made it into the 1960s, but we're not quite sure which ones are the last. Because they're just giving years, not months. And let's see. Yeah, they'd last a long time. I'm trying to go through my list of them. As always, any which actually stay with the Royal Navy actually don't last that long, but they do last quite a while. Yeah. Most go in the late 1940s, 1950s, but some they soldier into the 1960s. And some of them last for a lot longer, but I think I think, honestly, the longest lasting ones could have been the Danish ones. I'm definitely tempted to say it's going to be the Danish ones, looking at them. Because the Danes had some quite good boats. They lasted in service... Actually, I know, they lasted in service till 1959. Then they went about submarines for about 2 years while they got the Delphine class in service. And of course, we didn't discuss the Danish Navy today, but they don't have that many submarines. But they did have some. Then yeah, in many ways, the Danes, it's kind of cruel. The Danes are some of the best prepared of the Scandic navies for actual war. They actually have some new subs. They actually have been working, and then everything right, and then the Germans just come across their blooming border. It's just annoying. That's a fun time. Right then. Any word on North Korean sub-described as a destroyer? I know that's a joke. NK-33. It will probably... It will be refloated and probably eventually put into some form of use, but honestly, they'd be more sensible to just scrap it. They've basically built a... It's kind of a truncated version of a Type 52. It's kind of a 70% scale version of a Type 52 in some regards of the Chinese Navy, and it's an interesting vessel. And judging by what that ship's gone through, I wouldn't want to go to seeing it, but this is North Korea. They have probably refloated it. They have, I think, finally successfully refloated it, because they did refloat it, and then it went down, and then they refloated it again. But I think it's going to suffer sufficient damage to it that, frankly, I wouldn't want to use it. If you were designing a submarine for Norwegians, what would it be? I'd have gone with a limit. I would literally have, when the Estonians ordered that boat, I would have put in an order for a boat for about 10 of those in 1930s. And just that would have been it. It's a mine layer plus a torpedo boat. That would have been perfect for them. Small crew, being completely fine. If I was doing it today, they've made a good choice of it. The boat, I just don't think they're getting enough. I think they need about 12 of them. Look at how large the Norwegian coast is. Look at what they have to do, what they have to secure, what they have to protect, and what they have to provide presents for. You know, you need more than 6 boats. Further, North Korea would spend more money refloating it than it would cost to rebuild it, just to save face. Yes, that's an actual problem with them. Who besides the German Soviets operated subs in the Black Sea in World War II? I think, I want to say... I think both the Turks and the Hungarians did. I know the Hungarians had subs in World War I, but they didn't actually operate any subs in World War II. That's weird. Yeah. That's weird. I knew they operated in World War I, and I was sort of going, surely they must have... the Turks operated 2 boats. They were given British... they were basically based on the S-class. they had been requisitioned by the Royal Navy at outbreak of World War II, but then they actually delivered to Turkey in 1942 to strengthen them against Nazi Germany. But basically, once again, as the Royal Navy has proved many times in history, the British government might sign documents which says that they will never requisition boats being built for other nations' fleets if they are building them, and then the moment war comes, they actually do requisition them. It's the way it goes. Yeah, I'd happy do one on the Baltic Sea in World War II, but again, it'd be a patron question at this point, because I am considering the scenario where the Baltic Sea would come in, the year it would come in, is literal campaigns and literal water conflicts, and the year of littorals is a long way away. No, it's standard British practice. If war is breaking out, they requisition every ship being built in British yards. The ARA, La Argentina, all the other stuff. And it's good practice as well, because you need to grow the Royal Navy quickly. So you just go, whoop, take them. And that's your risk. If you're not building your ships yourself, and you're building them in someone else's yards, and they have a war, they can do that. That's their option. And especially they could argue, well, we're not sure if you might give them to our enemies or work with them, etc. You're going to do that. For us, the year, I'm never doing the Year of the Shed. I am never doing the Year of the Shed. In the nicest way, the Year of the Shed is not happening because, goodness gracious me, it would be terrible. Bulgarian submarines. They, again, I think it was World War One. They had a submarine. They had submarines in World War One. They didn't have them in World War Two. I thought Hungary might, because of who their leader was in World War One, in World War Two. So they might have done it, but hey. Yeah, they need the destroyers. Yes, 9681, but that's getting far more into a British ships discussion. Theodorus, I'm presuming they didn't pull that for more minor wars, e.g. Falklands. No, they didn't for the Falklands, but that was mainly because no one was in the construction in British yards at that point. They didn't for the Falklands, but they did it for major wars. Rozensky was doing all sorts of things prior to World War II. He wasn't actually in the Black Sea. He was mostly in the Baltic. He did do some work with the Hungarian Navy, but he was mostly a Baltic officer. Rozensky was mostly the Baltic. That's where he set up the gunnery school. That's where he did most of those operations. He was mostly Baltic fleet. And traditionally in the Russian Navy at that point, the Baltic fleet was where you had the competent officers. The Black Sea Fleet for the Russian Navy has, for time immemorial, been the one where you send the politically connected officers. And that continued under the Soviets. The Black Sea Fleet is always full of the... They're well connected, but oh god, are they dumb. The Northern Fleet now tends to get the best of the best. The Pacific Fleet gets the rest of them. And the Baltic Fleet gets people who are effective but expendable, I think is the phrase that I heard thrown. Yeah. Borneo, yes, but in the nicest way, 1883 to 1885. He was there. That's 10 years before Toshima. And that's a very short time in quite a long career. So saying that post helped him get anywhere near command at Toshima is, I'm sorry, just not the case. It's, one in a Rozensky has quite a lot of action, interesting actions in his career, but the Baltic was more his experience. He was good at diplomacy, and that's one of the reasons why he's needed for getting the fleet out there, because he can do the diplomacy on the way, and they can trust him on the fly to manage the diplomacy of getting the fleet through the positions they have to deal with, and that comes from his Baltic experience, because he's managed to deal with the Swedes, the Finns, and all the other people in the Baltic, and do it successfully. And also, he is known as a training officer, and you're going to need to train that fleet. Anyway, as said, I'm going to call that an evening on here. I will pop through and be on Discord later after I've checked on the family. Next week's Tuesday video is the Battle of Midway, Distance of Regard. And what have we got coming up? Next Saturday's video is what makes a propeller form suitable for one task, not another. And next Thursday video has yet to be announced, but is going to be a fun one, because that's one of the ones I get to pick myself. So it fits in the year of leadership. And Doris, what would you say was the peak of Russian-Soviet naval power? I'm very ignorant when it comes to naval history, so the Black Sea, the Crimean War comes to mind first. Honestly, the peak of Russian naval power is probably around about 1815, 1820 in age of sail. The peak of Soviet naval power is about 1988, 1989. Peter the Great starts things off, but no, the Russian Navy is not very good at that point. It gets better under Catherine the Great, who is much its successor. That's why I did the Russo-Swedish Wars of the 18th century, because by 1790 they're getting a lot better. They're actually getting better, and that's even though that's at the point that Sezgins happened, where of course the Swedes have their biggest victory over the Russians. Take care, everyone. Thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all the super chats and memberships and thank yous. There's so many. Jack Ray and the Anonymous on Twitch, and thank you everyone for doing all these things. It's so kind of you. It really is. Take care and have a nice time. Toodles. And as I said, I'll be on Discord in a bit, and there's brew ships tomorrow evening, where naval history questions will be answered for, well, knowing me, it'll be about 4.5, 5 hours. Take care. And Twitch tomorrow morning, which might be Space Marine, might be UAD, depending on what I'm feeling like after I've come back from my walk. Hopefully I get to do my walk. Yeah, I never thought it. It used to be pre-2020, COVID lockdown. My average thing was an hour and a half in the gym every single day. Now my exercise regime is an hour's walk and half an hour on a bike a day. Oh, that's lovely. Take care, everyone. Thank you for watching, and it will get better. It always gets better, and that's for everyone. Keep getting on. Things will get better. Take care.